Commissioner Esposito present.
Commissioner Kenyatta Bay,
Commissioner Kenyatta Bay, present.
Commissioner Lawson,
Commissioner Lawson present.
Commissioner Muhammad,
Commissioner Muhammad present.
Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Sally,
Commissioner Sally present.
Commissioner Slater Harrington.
Commissioner Slater Harrington, present.
I am present. That is 9 members present with 1 absent. Is there a motion to reopen the meeting?
So moved, Vice Chair Roberts.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor, Vice Chair Roberts, Commissioner Coy,
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito,
Yes.
Commissioner Kenyatta Bay,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Muhammad,
Yes.
Commissioner Sally,
Yes.
Commissioner Slater Harrington.
Yes.
I'm also in favor. That motion passes unanimously with the members who are present. Please join me in standing as we have the presentation of colors by the Reach Partnership High School Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streamed, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave through to the night that a flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Joyful, joyful, we are going to sing. Oh, we Lord above, hearts of gold by early morning, hoping to the sun above. Bound the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the dark of doubt away. In the rubbing hearts of tyrants, fill with the light of day. Thou art giving singing, wells.
Thank you so much to the Reach Partnership High School, our JROTC. We have another song? Okay, we're in fourth.
And the living is easy. Fish are jumping, and the cotton is high. Oh, your daddy's rich, and your mom's good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings, you're gonna rise up singing, and you spread your wings and you take to the sky. But till that morning, there's nothing can harm you. With daddy and mama standing by.
Let's give it up again for the Reach Partnership Music Program. Under the direction of Mr. Nicholas Babani, we have Brian Castro, London Rose, Tyrion Miller. Did I pronounce that correctly? Terrain, all right, Terrain Miller, Tyler Accor, and Kaya Tucker. Let's give them another round of applause. That summertime selection is from the very infamous Porgy and Bess. It was an opera that was written to be performed by people of color. And so just some history there in the 1930s that was unheard of at the time. And so it's nice to hear some of our young people keeping that music alive and being able to touch some of history that is very relevant to who they are. We also have the ROTC program from the Reach. Can we give them another round of applause? We have Cadet Captain Evelyn Anzurez, Cadet Staff Sergeant Rashad Smallwood. We have Cadet Sergeant Major Forrest Spriggs, Cadet Staff Sergeant Justin Pereira, and Cadet Second Lieutenant Camille Brown. Thank you all again for all of that work. That's right, we're celebrating them. We're in their house tonight. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Lawson, who will read the names of those that we have lost. Commissioner Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to take the time to recognize the passing of a city school student. Each of these individuals were a part of our city schools community. They will be remembered fondly by the greater city schools community. Tonight, we send our deepest condolences to their friends and family. Raya Hall. Raya Hall was a ninth grader at Benjamin Franklin High School and most recently in our home and hospital program. Raya had a great smile and was always smiling. We will miss him. Princess Dea Floor. Princess was a kindergartner at the Belmont Elementary School, excuse me. She was fun, loving, and had a kind spirit. She loved learning to read and playing with her friends during recess. Her favorite colors were pink and white. She had the biggest smile, but not as all of her other friends in her big heart. Princess will be missed by the greater community. We loved her.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the prior open session minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is there a second?
Second, Kenyatta Bay.
Thank you, Commissioner Kenyatta Bay. All in favor, Vice Chair Roberts, Commissioner Coy,
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito,
Yes.
Commissioner Kenyatta Bay,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Muhammad,
Yes.
Commissioner Sally,
Yes.
Commissioner Slater Harrington.
Yes.
I'm also in favor. That motion passes unanimously with the members who are present. Is there a motion to approve the closed session summaries? Thank you, Vice Chair. Is there a second?
Second, Esposito.
Thank you, Commissioner Esposito. All in favor, Vice Chair Roberts, Commissioner Coy,
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito,
Yes.
Commissioner Kenyatta Bay,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Muhammad,
Yes.
Commissioner Sally,
Yes.
Commissioner Slater Harrington.
Yes.
I'm also in favor. That motion passes unanimously with the members who are present. Welcome to our our April 23rd Public Board meeting. Aren't we in a beautiful auditorium? Look around. It's a beautiful space. We are in one of our beautiful schools. This is what we consider a 21st century school building. And so we're grateful to be here. We're grateful to be in this community. We're grateful to Dr. Gresham and the staff here at the Reach and the Reach community. And so with that, that's right. Is Reach in the house? I love that energy. Now keep all that energy tonight. All right, keep that energy. But we're going to bring up, this is such a beautiful place. It's a great place to be. It's one of my favorite schools in the district. I'm going to ask Dr. Gresham, if you don't mind coming up. Dr. Gresham is the proud principal of the Reach Partnership School. If you could just bring us greetings tonight, Dr. Gresham, and any other information that you'd like to share with us and your community tonight.
Testing, much better. Greetings, Board of School Commissioners. I would say welcome to Reach Partnership High School. It is an honor to have you guys here hosting your board meeting. We want to say to Commissioner Coy, to Commissioner Muhammad, welcome back, and to our illustrious chair, I say welcome home. As you have mentioned yourself, you are an avid supporter of Reach Partnership High School, whether it's attending a football game, basketball game, or any activity that we have here in Reach. Speaking at our graduations, et cetera, we say welcome home to you, sir. To our amazing, phenomenal, and fearless leader, Dr. Santelises, we say welcome as always. It's great to have you back here at Reach Partnership High School. To our chiefs, our cabinet members, we say welcome. To our invited guests, we welcome you to Reach Partnership High School, where we are on a mission to move our students from good to great. We do not take that mission lightly. And also, I would like to extend an opportunity to all of you, because I know the work you do can be sometimes stressful. Our nursing and pharmacy students are in the foyer. If you need to have your blood pressure checked on the way out, they are available to service you there. I often encourage my students here at Reach Partnership High School to tell the Reach story, because no one can tell the story like we do. We live it, we write it each and every day that we're here at Reach Partnership High School. So in light of some of the things that have been happening in and around our school community, I would like to take a few minutes, if I could, to just share a brief moment of the Reach story with the board. So with that said, I'll move quickly into this. Our mission stays the same regardless of the circumstances around us. We are preparing our young people for life beyond high school, whether they're going into the workforce or in any college endeavors that they may have. Our mission and our motto is to move our students from good to great, as I've said. This is just some demographic here on our school. I just want to lift that we serve about 750, 800 kids any given school year, and about a third of those students are students with disabilities and have an IEP. I lift that because I want to share with you, I think it serves to give a little framework as to what we're doing here at Reach and why the work is so special. A little bit about our programs for those of you who are new to Reach Partnership High School. We offer healthcare pathways for students in nursing and pharmacy. We also have carpentry, heating, HVAC programs, Homeland Security, ROTC, which you just witnessed, And then we also offer for our students who have aspirations to go into college, we offer AP courses, and we have a dual enrollment partnership with BCCC and Coppin State University. We also have a specialized life skills program here. And we also have a ninth grade academy to support our students who are transitioning into high school to give them that extra layer of support as they matriculate into our facility. We have after school programs. I won't list them all, but I want you to know that we have fine arts programs. We have productions here. We have plays here, etc. We also have a chess club, which is we were also named chess champions, won the chess championship this year rather. Sewing clubs. We have male and female mentoring groups. So I just want to go through all this list of things, the great things that are happening in our school. You see a list of all athletic teams that we have here at Reach Partnership High School, but I will highlight two of those things that are really standouts for us. Our boys varsity basketball team has won the state championship 4 out of the last 6 years. So we're very excited for them for that. And our boys varsity football team made it to the regional round this year as well. This does not happen by osmosis. These are just some pictures that we take throughout the school year. We use this green space, this beautiful green space that you see outside here on Winning Wednesdays in the spring. You'll see the teachers and the school community come together, play pickup softball games, volleyball games, flag football with our students. So we're really proud of our school community and instilling a great deal of pride in our students as well. Just some pictures here from some of our Winning Wednesday activities. We celebrated Hispanic Heritage Month this year. And here's a few key accomplishments, because I know I was told I had 5 minutes and I can talk about Reach all night. So I'm going to stick to my 5 minutes. Just some of the things about our pathways. What makes them so interesting here and uniquely different is that we have, as I mentioned, those pathways. What you'll notice in each one of those pathways, we track historical data on how many students are earning those certifications. So for every pathway that we offer, our students receive a certification, initial certification for that chosen pathway. In addition, they also earn a CPR, AED, first aid, and OSHA 30 certification. So every kid coming through one of those pathways earn those certifications. With that, we won't talk much about our graduation rates, but we are ranked 13th by last year's graduation rates. We ranked 13th in the 4-year cohort graduation, so we're very proud of that, and we exited out of CSI status as a result of that. And for our 5-year cohort rate for these are for Baltimore City Schools, we rank 11th. And again, our CSI, our graduation rate is about 80%. So I'll move quickly past that because I want to show you a few students that I would like to highlight, and I believe a couple of them may actually be here in the auditorium. This year, we had Anthony Herman, who entered his art piece in the mayor's competition. He won first place. And I don't think, is Anthony here? And we also have Brian Castro, who's currently serving in the Maryland General Assembly as a state page. As you can see him there with our governor, doing some great work there with our legislators. Derek Dowd just won a full academic scholarship, and the team from McDaniel was here to welcome him last week. Donna Ross, Milana Brown, and Beja, they are our pharmacy interns, and I believe they're in here. Stand up, ladies. They are currently working in the Giant on Waverly. So if you go in the Giant on Waverly, you'll see 3 of our young people there working, feeling their field experience. They're doing their internships there. So please stop in and say hello to them. Milana Brown was also a College Brown Student of the Week. So we're excited for her. Alex Dingle and Carson Marks both are part of a workforce development partnership that we have there. These students will be spending the summer in Ocean City, where they'll be learning a lot about marine biology and doing the various other opportunities that are available through them through the Ocean City Workforce Development Program and the Henry Long Fellowship for Marine Biology. And Kenyon Garnett, I think I saw him today. And Bryce Carter. This young man, BGE has a very competitive process for the internships for the summer. And these 2 young men you see on the screen here, Kenyon Garnett and Bryce Carter, both won a BGE paid internship for the summer. So we're very excited for them. Deshaun Daniel was just nominated into the National Football Foundation Hall of Fame for the Scholar Athlete Award. So we're proud of Deshaun. And this young lady who's very special to me, she's here, but I think they have a track meet and they're trying to get her back here. And I'll share her a little bit about her story and I'll get out you guys' way. So Brenda Collins started school here 2 years ago. She's 11th grader now. Last year, towards the end of the year, her parents moved to DC. Brenda did not want to leave Reach. Brenda is now commuting from Washington, D.C. every day by train to come to Reach so she can participate in these programs. And we're very excited about Brenda. And I think it speaks volumes, not just on behalf of Brenda, but what we offer here at Reach, the sense of community and belonging that we offer here at Reach. She has a 3.3 GPA. She's in our nursing and ROTC program. She's running track right now, which is why she's not here. She's going to be upset that she missed it, but she wanted to be here. She plays volleyball and basketball and softball. So I share that with you because I think it speaks volumes, again, as I said, about our school community. And then we just brought some kids back from our international trip. We took some students over to Croatia, Slovenia, Montenegro, and Italy about 3 weeks ago. We had a great time there with our young people, experiencing that culture. And so with that said, I am going to leave you guys to do your board meeting. I really, but every time I get the opportunity to talk about Reach, I am always excited to tell the Reach story because I think we tell it better than some media outlets tell it. So thank you guys for listening. All right. All right. And I would be remiss, I'm sorry, before I take my seat. I have the most amazing staff, the best staff in Baltimore City Schools, the Reach Partnership High School staff who make all these wonderful things happen. All right. Thank you, guys.
Well, what a way to start this meeting. And it's amazing to be in this school community again. And as you can hear and see, the reason why this is such a great first meeting outside of meeting location outside of 200 East North Avenue, where we can share with the community on some of the great things happening, but we can also do our work. So can we give another round of applause to the Reach Partnership School? All right, here we are, less than 40 days away from the end of another school year. So I want to shout out, are you excited about that? We have some seniors that are coming up on their last few days of school. And then we also have some exams for our sophomore, our juniors, and our freshmen. And so we certainly want to end the school year strong. And we want to shout out the hardworking and determined educators, the administrative staff, and every employee in between. Your contributions have been nothing short of exceptional. As we push to finish the year strong, I want to highlight a few things happening in city schools and ways that members of our communities can get involved. First, the Office of Communications will celebrate graduating seniors in a 2024 Graduate Spotlight. From now until May 3rd, educators and staff can nominate a senior who they feel exemplifies your school's spirit and values. These seniors will be featured in a district-wide celebration, including featured photos, advertisements, newsletters, and social media. Again, the deadline for nominations is Friday, May 3rd, so staff, please do not wait to nominate some of our amazing students who are about to graduate. Next, City Schools recently launched the Partnership for Reading Success. This special project is designed to create reading resources for elementary students and their families. Earlier this month, staff held a family feedback session to learn what families felt were the best tools to help their child become a strong reader. I want to thank everyone who attended. The information you shared is crucial in the project's next action steps. More information on the project and how you can get involved in the future, that information is forthcoming. Speaking of getting involved, the board wants to hear your feedback on policies JLCDB and KCB, policy JLCDB and policy KCB. Policy JLCDB provides clarity to schools and families on anaphylactic allergy management. Policy KCB provides clarity on volunteer engagement in our city schools communities, and we know how important that is. Both policies are currently under review, and we want to hear your thoughts before the board votes and finalizes those policies. To submit feedback, please visit the board policies webpage on the City Schools website, open the form, select the policy, type in your feedback and contact information, and submit. Submissions will be reviewed by district personnel, the board, and other subject matter experts. Another way to get involved is by joining the Board of School Commissioners. Yay! As you all know, this is volunteer work, but it is hard work. And it is very important work to really move the goals of our system forward and to ensure the outcomes are improved for each and every one of our children. So applications are now open until May 20th. Baltimore residents 18 and older who are passionate about education and community involvement are encouraged to apply. And so, unlike many other school boards in Baltimore City, our board must be made up of parents, folks that are educators, folks who have special education expertise, folks who have large business acumen. And so that's very important to our board. And to the makeup of our board, which is different from a lot of other school boards throughout the country. In addition to our 2 members, our 3 members who are elected at large, because now our student member is also elected at large. So we're asking for your support in our community and others who are listening to join now and echo the voices of Baltimore's youth, families, and community members. Again, the deadline is Monday, May 20th. To learn how to apply, please visit the board webpage on the City Schools website. The district is also accepting applications for the Equity Advisory Committee. Help us to remain transparent and share accountability in decision-making when you become a committee member. Students, City Schools alum, parents, guardians, school staff, and community partners are all encouraged to join. More information, please visit the Office of Equity webpage on the City Schools website. If you're interested, please apply by Tuesday, April 30th. That is this Tuesday coming. In May, City Schools celebrates, there's so much happening, right? In May, City Schools celebrates Fine Arts Month. Can we give it up for our fine arts students and our fine arts educators? I see a couple who are here. Fine Arts Month provides a platform for our students to explore and express their creativity and innovation through various art forms. To show their expressive choice throughout May, we will host student performances at the district office. Schools from across the district can sign up to showcase their students' talents in singing, dancing, acting, musical instrument playing, their artwork. All of that will be on display at the City Schools headquarters. Educators who would like their students to participate in Fine Arts Month can contact the Office of Fine Arts to sign up. And lastly, did you all know that the board has a quarterly newsletter? You didn't know that? So to stay informed on all of the latest information regarding the board, please subscribe to our interactive newsletter, which is titled The School Board Beat. The School Board Beat provides key information and resources about board news, events, meetings, achievement, community engagement opportunities, and more. Please subscribe by visiting the board's webpage on the City Schools website. The board acknowledges a donation of $29,583 to the Paul Lawrence Dunbar football team from the Johns Hopkins Community Support Team for rings, jackets, and shirts to celebrate their championship. Thank you all very much. Is there a motion to approve the personnel, employment, and payroll agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Slater Harrington. Is there a second?
Second, Esposito.
Thank you, Commissioner Esposito. All in favor, Vice Chair Roberts, Commissioner Coy,
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito,
Yes.
Commissioner Kenyatta Bay,
Yes.
Commissioner Muhammad,
Yes.
Commissioner Sally,
Yes.
Commissioner Slater Harrington.
Yes.
I'm also in favor. That motion passes unanimously with the members who are present. I will now turn it over to Dr. Santelises for CEO comments.
Thank you, Chair McFadden. Oh, these are real mics. Thank you, Chair McFadden. And I just want to give another round of thank you to the team here at REACH, Dr. Grisham, and all of the young people who we saw this evening. I said to a couple of the young people, and I said, so this means you didn't get to go home in between? And they said, yes, ma'am, we did not get to go home. So
They
I.
fed them, though.
Yes, no, and I checked on that too, Chair McFadden. They said, oh, no, we got to eat. So that's what counts. But I want to thank them again for hosting. I would also like to invite Chief Emily Nielsen, our Human Capital Officer, forward for this evening's PEP agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Constantine.
Just want to make sure, excuse me, Chief Nielsen, that the folks who are joining us, again, that you remain muted unless you are a member of the CEO's staff. Thank you, everyone.
Can you hear me? Okay, wonderful. If you are here tonight and your name is on the PEP, please feel free to stand up when I read your name so we can recognize you, or if you're joining us online, to turn on your camera so that we can see you. On tonight's PEP agenda, from the Office of the Chief Academic Officer, an appointment recommended that Catherine Meach, currently Academic Content Liaison Literacy, be appointed Coordinator Literacy Coaching, effective April 24th, 2024. Appointments from the Office of the Chief of Schools. Recommended that Malachi Drummer, currently Educational Consultant with Concentric Education Solutions, be appointed Assistant Principal at Lakeland Elementary Middle, effective July 1, 2024. Recommended that Michonne English, currently Assistant Principal at Mervo High School, be appointed Principal Resident at Augusta Fells Savage, effective July 1st, 2024. Recommended that Monique Harding, currently Interim Principal at Woodhome Elementary Middle, be appointed Principal at Woodhome Elementary Middle, effective April 24th, 2024. Congratulations, Principal Harding. Recommended that Patience Belhine, currently Assistant Principal at North Bend Elementary Middle, be appointed Principal at North Bend Elementary Middle, effective July 1st, 2024. Congratulations. Recommended that Akin Jones, currently Educational Associate at ACE, be appointed Assistant Principal at ACE, effective July 1st, 2024. Recommended that Dwayne Nelson, currently Assistant Principal at Wildwood Elementary Middle, be appointed Principal Resident at Glenmount Elementary Middle, effective July 1st, 2024. Recommended that Trish Singletary, currently Educational Associate 10-month at Vivian T. Thomas, be appointed Assistant Principal at Vivian T. Thomas, effective July 1st, 2024. Recommended that Lisa Roberson Davis, currently Educational Associate 10 months at Pimlico Elementary Middle, be appointed Assistant Principal at the Mount Washington School, effective July 1st, 2024. Recommended that James Thurman, currently Coordinator Literacy Coaching, be appointed Principal Resident at Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School, effective July 1st, 2024. And recommended that Charlene Wilby, currently Principal at the former Virtual Learning Program, be appointed Principal at the new Virtual Learning School, effective July 1st, 2024. Congratulations everyone on tonight's PEP report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Nielsen. Congratulations to all of this evening's appointees. As has become our practice, I would like to give a little more detail on each of our new principal appointees. So first, Patience Belhine has served city schools for the past 17 years. She is completing her 5th year as the assistant principal at North Bend Elementary Middle School, where she previously served as the lead teacher and an elementary teacher. Ms. Hine holds a bachelor's degree from Gettysburg College and a master's from Johns Hopkins University. Congratulations, Principal Hine. Monique Harding has served Baltimore City Schools for 23 years. After 8 years of teaching at Govans Elementary School, she was appointed assistant principal at Tench Tillman Elementary Middle School, which maintained one of the highest attendance rates in the district during her tenure. A little fun fact, I know that is because now Principal Harding would not just call families, she would literally show up at their doors with everybody either in or not pajamas. And I think, as folklore would have it, or as history would tell it, she would actually say, "And I'll wait for you to finish getting dressed so that you can come with me." Is that not true? See, and her former principal, now ILED, Jael Young, can attest to that. So that is no surprise. Mrs. Harding earned a Bachelor of Arts in English at Towson University and a Master's in Educational Leadership at the College of Notre Dame in Maryland. Congratulations, Principal Harding. Dr. Charlene Wilby is the principal of the Port Virtual Learning Program, now officially this evening, our virtual Baltimore City's virtual school. Previously, she served as resident at Hazelwood Elementary Middle School. Dr. Wilby earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Resource Management, a Master of Science in International Education, and an Educational Specialist degree. She earned her doctoral degree in Organizational Change and Leadership at the University of Southern California. Congratulations, Dr. Wilby. Again, I like to say some of the most important work that I do as a CEO is actually appoint who the school leaders will be in the district, because they are the ones, you are the ones who actually lead the change that impacts young people. Last week, City Schools hosted our second math night at the B&O Railroad Museum, where students and families had the opportunity to get connected. You'll see some of the shots here. Once again, hundreds of participants took advantage of this opportunity to strengthen their math skills, and as a lot of these pictures demonstrate, really engage not just parents, but also young people themselves in math. I want to give a special shout out to the Office of Family and Community Engagement, as well as our academics office. This was a real partnership and shows the power of cross-division collaboration and ways that we can creatively approach movement and growth towards our board student achievement goals. So thank you, everybody, and we were thrilled to see so many families out in attendance. I would now like to recognize two important days next month, both of which will occur before our next meeting, so I wanted to draw attention this evening. On Wednesday, May 1st, we will celebrate Principal Appreciation Day with our sincere thanks to our school leaders for doing one of the toughest, and as I just noted, most important jobs in education. We are blessed to have a cadre of dedicated professionals who are committed to the success of our schools, students, and families. We appreciate you, school principals. Thank you. Then on May 7th, we celebrate National Teacher Day as part of a week-long observance of National Teacher Appreciation Week. It is a fantastic opportunity to express our thanks to the dedicated men and women who work so hard inside and outside the classroom to build the foundation for a lifetime of learning and success for our young people. Thank you, teachers. And appropriately, and in line with Teacher Appreciation Week, we recently announced our 10 semifinalists for this year's City Schools Teacher of the Year. One of my favorite things to do as CEO. And I will tell you that my job has become increasingly more difficult and stressful every year because the quality of candidates increases every year, making it very hard, Chair McFadden, to make selection. And from what I can see, this year's cohort is no exception. So our finalists, our 10 semifinalists for this year, we are proud of each and every one of them and the excellence that they represent, include Latoya Allen, a kindergarten teacher at Graceland Park, O'Donnell Heights Elementary School, Natira Blount, second grade teacher at Mount Washington Elementary. Oh, got some parent shout out. Brandon Booth, who I know very well, vocal music teacher at Connections Community-Based Art School. Ashley Dembski, kindergarten teacher at Francis Scott Key Elementary Middle. Victoria Hoffman, visual arts teacher at Curtis Bay Elementary. Kat Locke Jones, 7th grade ELA teacher at Hampstead Hill Academy. Brendan McFadden, mathematics teacher at Hollabird Academy. Dr. Patrick Oray, 9th grade English teacher at Bard High School Early College. Brenda Serpic, and I think this is Brenda's second year in a row, 12th grade English teacher at Baltimore Polytechnic Institute. And Molly, I apologize ahead of time, Molly Snyderman, kindergarten teacher at Commodore John Rogers Elementary School. Congratulations to our finalists. Can we give them a round of applause? And just a big thank you to all of you just for bringing excellence to our city's children. I am very pleased to celebrate announcements that were made last week by both of Baltimore City's professional sports teams in support of our schools and students. First, I want to send a big thank you to our own Baltimore Orioles, who announced the launch of their Adopt a School campaign, a special partnership with the students and staff of Harlem Park Elementary Middle School. The Orioles are committed to providing Harlem Park with resources and opportunities, including plans to collaborate with Harlem Park on community outreach programs and fundraising initiatives. Big thanks to the Baltimore Orioles leadership just for really doubling down and wanting to expand their partnership with Baltimore City Schools. Then on Thursday, the Baltimore Ravens, the Stephen and Renee Bashotti Foundation, M&T Bank, and College Track announced the launch of the Baltimore Ravens College Access Program, a comprehensive college completion program that makes a 10-year commitment to students from underserved communities. In total, the Ravens College Access Program will be supported by $50 million in donations over the next decade, which will benefit 3 organizations dedicated to providing access to higher education for all of our students. On behalf of our young people and their families, I want to offer a heartfelt thank you to the Bashotti Foundation, the Ravens, and M&T Bank for your invaluable partnership and investment in our young people. And then finally, I want to give a shout out to all of the student leaders across the district. I was absolutely thrilled to be able to start my day at the ASCBC General Assembly this morning. I want to thank both Commissioners Lawson and, Commissioner Sally, I almost botched your name again 2 times in one day, and Commissioner Sally. I want you to know they were both out. Commissioner Sally and both he and Commissioner Lawson were actually handing out the scavenger hunt guides when I came in, but we were represented strong within ASCBC. We had the opportunity to hear from the guest speaker, which was Delegate Stephanie Smith, and I just have to tell you, the work that has occurred to actually go from what I would call minuscule or paltry participation, meaning very, very little, even 3 years ago, to the robust showing that I saw today, young people learning how to become pages. I was telling Chair McFadden, we have had probably a double-decade drought in Baltimore City school students becoming pages at the state level. I heard from Delegate Smith, our people were representing strong. They made the Baltimore City delegation proud. And I think Commissioner Sally would agree with me, the leadership being displayed by the ASCBC exec board said to me, our current elected officials need to up their game because they are coming for them. And they were absolutely on the ground moving. And I will say that I chuckled a bit when I got to announce to all the young people there that actually Commissioner Lawson was like one of a team of my bosses, and you could see everybody in the room like, yo, you're a boss. Not bad, not bad. But I just want to thank ASCBC. I want to thank Haley Tilt because she has just led young people into owning their agency. We have more young people than ever who are participating in student government, and we have 14 candidates. That's right, we used to draft the next student commissioner, and I remember when we did that. This year, there is a very competitive slate of 14 people running. Is that right? Isn't that right, Commissioner Lawson? Is it 14?
So it's 3 people running for student commissioner, but it's 14 people on the ballot for ASCBC.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yes.
Thank you. See, this is why he's a good boss. So one of the things that was just really excited was young people coming up and introducing this. Hello, Madam CEO. I just want you to know I am running for this seat, and I would love to be able to have a meeting with you at some point in the future, and our team would. And I want you to know it was the highlight of my day, seeing our young people leading from their seats. And this is what I mean when we talk about student wholeness. Yes, we want achievement up. Yes, right, we want young people to, have their mental health needs met. But if it is only about that, and it is not about preparing them to lead and getting them the practice to lead. They were talking about parliamentary procedure, and I had to tell them, do you know how many meetings I go to and there's not real parliamentary procedure? They are ready. So thank you, ASCBC. Thank you, Commissioner Sally and Commissioner Lawson, for being there today. Commissioner Lawson, I don't know if you want to have additional words, but that ends my official comments, unless, sir, you want to say something. Or Commissioner Sally, because you were there too.
I was going to save some of these for my remarks, but I guess I can say it now because this opens up the perfect time. Thank you for coming, of course. And I would also like to say thank you to the leaders that came before me. I'm just here to continue the work and improve the work that they started. It was a great opportunity to see a lot of schools there. We're in the middle of testing season. A lot of our seniors are coming down on our last days of school, but we took the time to have a meeting where we talked about our Constitution. Our Constitution got ratified, thank you. This year, that happens once a year. We talked about how to write bills. We talked about what legislation is. We talked about the Maryland General Assembly. And it was just an educational experience for everyone. I love having those meetings. I love telling people that they're my boss, that they voted me into this position and they hold me accountable to the things that I vote for and the things that I sit in these meetings and talk about all the time. So thank you for coming, and I appreciate those kind of words.
So we're so blessed to have Commissioner Lawson with us as our student commissioner. Thank you, Dr. Santelises. Thank you, Commissioner Lawson. I will now review the consent agenda. Board colleagues, please let me know if you would like an item removed. All of these items have gone through committee, but please state your question for staff. I'm pulling item 9.04 for a separate vote. Item 9.01, gift and donation. Item 9.02, the blueprint implementation plan. Item 9.03, policy ADF, wellness, nutrition, and physical activity policy, tier 2, second reader. Item 9.05, supplemental appropriation, athletic fields replacement upgrade projects. Item 9.06, supplemental appropriation, Universal Services Administrative Company. Item 14.01, splash business intelligence. Item 15.01, asphalt and concrete repair and replacement service. Item 15.02, Convergent Technologies LLC. Item 15.03, TJ Distributors, Inc. Item 15.04, Whole Roofing Company, Inc. Item 15.05, structural building renovation and repair services. Item 15.06, Easter's Lock and Access Systems Incorporated. Item 15.07, wood floor refinishing, replacement, repairs, and relining services. Item 15.08, Tito Contractors Incorporated. Item 15.09, Janus Contractors Incorporated. Item 16.01, AON Consulting Incorporated. Thank you. We'll now move to public comment. Speakers from recognized groups will have the opportunity to speak for 5 minutes. First, we have Christina Duncan Evans, representing the Baltimore Teachers Union.
Good evening. My name is Christina Duncan Evans, and I'm the Teacher Chapter Chair of the Baltimore Teachers Union. Tonight, I'm following up on several important questions the BTU has posed, and I am requesting a response from the board to each one. Retaliation. We sent the board a cease and desist letter regarding retaliation against union members who used public comment. Since we sent that cease and desist letter, the practice has continued. Recently, a BTU member was called into a meeting and admonished by their supervisor for giving public comment. In addition, following their public comment, this member is now facing an accusation of harassment simply because they repeatedly reached out for support during an urgent situation at a school. The accusation is retaliatory and unacceptable, and we reiterate our demand that you stop retaliating against employees who give public comment at school board meetings. Wit and wisdom. Recently, in response to white backlash, question prompts regarding the text of Ruby Bridges were edited in Wit and Wisdom. The new questions remove references to injustice and themes of empathy. For example, the original question, write an exploded moment narrative from the point of view of Ruby Bridges as she steps in the crowd on her way to school. Explain her response to injustice by describing her thoughts, feelings, and actions in this moment. Include one adjective and one adverb. That question has been replaced by, imagine a day at school. What is your favorite activity? Use first-person point of view to write a narrative moment that describes an action you take and what you think and feel as you engage in your favorite activity at school. We previously raised these questions in March. We still haven't received answers regarding the change to curriculum. Our questions are, next slide. When will teachers get the questions back? If Wit and Wisdom changes its curriculum in response to racist attacks in other instructional markets, are BCPSS teachers able to retain use of the former uncensored curriculum? If Wit and Wisdom requires Baltimore City Public Schools to use only the newer censored curriculum, can BCPSS supplement literacy with locally created curriculum materials that support diversity, equity, and inclusion? Finally, I'd like to speak about the Evolve pilot. We have detailed questions about whether and how the Evolve system works, how it supports school safety and operations, as well as its impact on the student experience. During the pilot, students at Mervo were being told to remember the acronym BLUE, BLUE. Their binder, laptops, umbrellas, and eyeglass cases needed to come out of bags during the search. However, Evolve system produces many false alarms. How would you feel as a student if you were searched and scanned TSA style every day just to access your education? Our other questions include, what justifies pursuing a contract with a company that is under investigation by the SEC and the FTC? Might there be better ways to improve safety and security, including making sure that all classroom doors have locks and that exterior door locks are working and alarm systems are operational? These requests have been made repeatedly by both the BTU and PCAP. Can meetings with student leaders be held after school hours and with a virtual option? Is the goal of the new system safety or speed? What is currently known about how the pilot meets these goals? How does this particular technology fulfill both goals in a way that is satisfactory to the young people who enter buildings every day? Will data from the pilot about effectiveness, reliability, and speed be made available to the public in a way that is accessible and transparent? In conclusion, I'd like to remind all BTU members that tomorrow is Wear It Wednesday. Please remember to wear your yellow BTU shirt in solidarity. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Next, we'll have Jasine Blessed, the Diversity Committee Chair with the Associated Student Congress of Baltimore City, ASCBC.
Good evening, Commissioner and City Schools community. My name is Jason Blessed. I'm in the 11th grade and I attend Patterson High. I currently serve as the Diversity Committee Chair for ASCBC, and I will be giving you an update on the work my committee has done, ASCBC's General Assembly, and the work our Elections Committee has done. I would like to provide some updates from ASCBC's Elections Committee on behalf of committee's co-chair, our advisor, Ms. Haley Tilt, and Tatiana Flournoy, who attends Green Street Academy. As of today, the committee can confirm that ASCBC has 12 candidates running in the election for student commissioner, ASCBC president, vice president, middle school executive, treasurer, and secretary. Candidates will be announced on ASCBC's website tomorrow, and the campaign window officially kicks off on April 29th. Candidates' campaign videos and virtual digital voter guide will be available on ASCBC's website, and election posters will be mailed to schools in early May. Please help us spread the word about 2 upcoming election events. ASC will be hosting a live candidate town hall on May 9th, 6 to 7 p.m. on City Schools YouTube from May 20th to 23rd. All 6th through 12th grade students will have the opportunity to vote for their representatives by going to eballot.app/BCPS and entering their student ID and birth date as credentials. Earlier today, ASCBC held its Spring General Assembly with over 250 students from 30 schools represented. Delegates learned about the upcoming student commissioner and ASCBC election, used preliminary procedure to ratify ASCBC's constitution and annual requirement, and prepared to increase voter turnout at their schools by participating in student-led workshops. We would like to thank our guest speakers, Dr. Santelises and Delegate Stephanie Smith, and we would like to thank the board and city school leadership for supporting ASCBC and strengthening our coalition of student governments. ASCBC has the benefit of bringing together students from a large number of schools, traditional and charter schools, neighborhood and commuter schools, and entrance and non-entrance criteria schools. When we bring students together across the city, it is inevitable that we will discuss our school communities differ. At our fall issue assembly, 2 of the issues that students surfaced were the disparities in access to rigorous AP and IB curriculum and college counseling resources. Speaking for myself, I have seen substantial gaps between the curriculum that is available to me at Patterson and the curriculum available to some of my peers on the ASC Executive Board who attend Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, Baltimore City College, and Western High School. Speaking as a collective, we believe that our current system of school choice and entrance criteria schools are deepening inequities in Baltimore City schools. As an outgrowth of ASCBC's awareness of these disparities, this year, our diversity committee has focused on understanding the role that school choice plays in Baltimore City's public schools. We started with research referencing our own experiences, studying the Fund of Educational Excellence 2017 equity analysis of school choice, and conducting research actions with member Baltimore City school staff, including Mr. Dennis Dutras, who oversees talented and gifted programming, and Chief Tina Hike-Huber, who oversees the Office of Enrollment. We wish to thank them both for their time and expertise. We do not intend for our critique to reflect on them and the dedicated work they are doing to improve education for all city school students. This is a systemic, not individual issue. Generally speaking, our entrance criteria schools offer students better access to rigorous curriculum than others, and many parents feel that they must send their children to these schools in order for them to receive a quality education. Every parent and every student should feel comfortable and excited to go to any school. No student should feel that they have to leave their neighborhood to get a proper education. While school choice and entrance criteria schools are Baltimore's tradition, we believe that these systems must be revised if we are sincere in our goal of providing an excellent education to every student in Baltimore City. ASCBC's Diversity Committee is still in its work on the equity implications of school choice and entrance criteria schools, and we plan to continue our research into this issue. If you are a student or know a student who feels strongly about these issues, please encourage them to join ASCBC's Diversity Committee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Jason and ASCBC and all of what you all do. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Next, we have Carl E. Perry, the president of the Public School Administrators and Supervisors Association, Pizzazz. Good evening, Mr. Perry.
Good evening. Greetings, Chair McFadden, Vice Chair Roberts, honorable board members, and of course, Dr. Santelises. I hope that you are doing well as we work towards the final 2 months of this academic year. I've had the wonderful opportunity to be associated with city schools for the past 3 decades. Of course, even longer as a result of the many decades that my family has worked to educate the children of Baltimore. The irony of you being there tonight, I remember as a toddler, not even a toddler, as a baby, when my grandmother was one of the original teachers at the Lake Clifton campus. To see the growth and development of city schools is wonderful. Educating children and working to reshape lives is not something that one can or should take lightly. Though we know there are some who value others and personal interest more than that of the children. We know that because we can see that in some of the decisions or even some of the behaviors that they exhibit towards staff and even students. My focus today, though, is on the loyal leaders of Pizzazza. We have historically been a respected, cherished, and celebrated group. It has always been a pleasure to lead district offices, campuses, school communities, and not one that we take lightly. Just this morning, I spoke to a school leader who indicated he arrives at 6:15 every morning and leaves after 6 p.m. He has to ensure that his campus is ready for staff and students. His goal is to provide for his staff so that they can educate his students. When I asked, "Are you interested in leaving?" he said, "No, I'm on a mission to make my school great." Last week, another principal referenced how she even goes to her building every weekend. She bypasses social events for her children and canvasses the neighborhood frequently to make sure her children are safe when they're leaving. There was also the assistant principal who tried to render life-saving measures to a child last year. There's also a team of administrators who bravely stand at bus stops on a daily basis to remain watchful as children leave the campus, venturing out into Baltimore City. Sad to say, even myself throughout the years missed my girls growing up, as I was always working and responding to school events or situations. My open door policy at school supported the emotional well-being of students and staff while taking a toll on me. I had always stressed to my staff, God, then family, then work. But I combined the last two. In my growth, I will not do the same to my son. We don't do this for a title. We don't do this for compensation. We do this because we're loyal and compassionate for children. Our unwavering love for the children who we proudly serve. We are loyal to a detriment because we make sacrifices that should not be made. Sacrifices that should not be expected and in some instances required. There's the administrator who contacted me last weekend as she watched her husband and children enjoying themselves outside playing in the recent warm weather, also while she was stuck behind a computer entering time-sensitive data. Mind you, this data could have been delayed, but due to the OIT report timeline, she had to stay inside. Not that our students are not deserving of our loyalty, but the fact that it's growing more apparent that this loyalty is becoming one-sided. Our leaders do not feel the same loyalty that they give is being reciprocated anymore. not beyond kind words, because actions speak volumes. I've heard this a lot lately. Where is the loyalty? I've given all these years to be treated like this with no respect. Our district has a tendency to move administrators at the end of the year. There are times when this is unwarranted and may be based off of supervisor bias or general personal feelings towards the impacted member. More irony about tonight, I had previously mentioned that this district has a past culture of retaliation against employees. This can appear in many offices by many different leaders. It can be hidden behind the state law, which allows employees to work at the pleasure of the CEO. No,
Time.
I'm not implying that our CEO is behind such actions. Let me be abundantly clear. Pizzazza supports our CEO and the continued partnership that we've established.
Yeah.
However, I will say from conversations around the state, there are only 2 districts which use and even abuse this law, and they are city schools in Prince George's County. Any similarities?
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
can you finalize your thought for us, please?
We're heading towards a steep cliff. The members who feel that there's no loyalty from the district will lead to us losing more members. We can't afford to lose any more members. Thank you for your time. Have a good night, and please be safe.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
You're welcome.
We'll now have Rachel Duncan, Treasurer of the Parent Community Advisory Board. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Duncan. Nice to see you all, and thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak on behalf of PCAB. Is this actually projecting my voice? Okay. I'm the proud mom of a 9th grader and a 7th grader in Baltimore City Schools, and here tonight representing the Parent and Community Advisory Board, or PCAB. Board policy BDF states that PCAB will submit a written report or make a presentation at a board business meeting each quarter. So here goes our PCAB quarterly report with updates for the public as of March 31st on our work this year. We've organized our work around 3 priorities. The first one is building capacity within PCAB and its committees. This has been a busy year for that, filling vacant positions and preparing for upcoming turnover for PCAB members whose terms, like mine, will be up at the end of June. So I'm like a senior, a graduating senior in PCAB, waiting for the prom. The good news is that we successfully filled our vacant positions, and we've identified most, if not all, of the candidates that will replace our 5 graduating members in June. Please visit our website, www.pcabbaltimore.org, to meet our entire 14-member board, and stay tuned for more updates as we transition into the next school year. Our number 2 priority is family and community engagement, how to engage more broadly with families and school communities. So our members not only volunteer our time to engage at meetings of the PCAB and the school board, but you can also find us out in the community, tabling and talking to community members about how to engage at their schools and with the district office. For example, PCAB members were sharing information and resources at last month's Baltimore Teacher Network Mayoral Education Town Hall. PCAB's also active on social media channels in addition to IRL. So please connect with us on Facebook at BCPS PCAB, and on both Instagram and Twitter at BCPSS PCAB. And we're on LinkedIn now too. Last but not least, 3rd priority that we organize our work around is policy development and engaging families and community members in that work with the district. So we've had 2 PCAB policy priorities this year. The first one is policy ADF, wellness, nutrition, and physical activity. District staff met with PCAB and members of the public at our December public meeting for pre-drafting feedback. And you'll see in the second reader presentation, I think tonight, for this policy, that they have incorporated PCAB feedback into the revisions. And then the other policy we focused on this year is IKA grading and reporting, which is also on tonight's agenda for first reader, and PCAB hosted district staff for a framing discussion at our February public meeting for that one. So we look forward to seeing how that has been incorporated. Lastly, please join us at our next public meeting, which will be held Thursday, May 16th at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom and streamed live from our Facebook page. We will be welcoming Dr. Santelises for conversation with PCAB and members of the public, and circulating an online form for questions for her in advance through our email newsletter and Facebook page. So again, please go to our website, www.pcabbaltimore.org. You can click to join our mailing list to make sure you get that survey and other information about PCAB. That concludes our updates and the report. Thank you to everyone for your time and attention, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Rachel. We'll get a copy of that report, correct? Thank you very much. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Judkins, our Board Executive Officer, for the other public comments.
Thank you, Chair. We have 3 public comments this evening. They'll all be live in person. Our first is Sean McKay, who's a teacher. Agenda topic will be sponsorship. Go ahead and come forward. You will have 3 minutes.
Guess my pre-K voice wasn't loud enough. Okay. Good evening, and to everyone in their respective places. I thank you for this opportunity. My name is Sean McKay. I'm a pre-K teacher at Lakewood Elementary School. I am a proud member of the National Alliance of Black School Educators, and I am here on behalf of the Baltimore local affiliate, Metropolitan of Baltimore Alliance of Black School Educators, to ask for your support in sponsoring between 5 to 10 teachers and 5 to 10 PSRPs from Baltimore City Public Schools to attend the upcoming National Education Conference. It's the 52nd International Annual NAPSE conference that will be held. Our theme for this year is Empowering Black Excellence, Our Students, Our Future. It will be held on November the 20th, 2004 in Atlanta, Georgia, this year. It will offer valuable professional development. It would give opportunities for educators to go and come back and help our students inside the classroom. I have been a member of NAPSE since 2009 when I graduated from BCC. And I would greatly appreciate your sponsorship for sending our teachers and our PSRP so that we can come back and share what we've learned. It's a very awesome experience. I've met some of the principals that the board sent last year because I am the commission chair for the Instructional Support Commission that is a part of the national organization. So I stand here asking for support for our teachers, PSRPs. I see all of you all have the letter in front of you. I'm not a verbatim. I was taught not to read to people. So I'm giving you my heartfelt information that I've been involved with. And I want to say, I'm not sure if he's still here, but there was one of the teachers that actually presented during my commission last year to our students. And it's so hard to explain. You would have to experience, because the National Alliance of Black School Educators started out being just for superintendents. They've opened the doors for our parents, students, and our teachers. And I have been charged to bring more educators to this conference, and we're asking for sponsorship for them. I greatly appreciate this opportunity, and have a great evening.
Thank you. Our next public comment is Cynthia Shaw. Agenda topic is Edmondson West Side High School. Thank you, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Also, can you hear me okay? Good evening, everyone. I am Cynthia Shaw, President of the Lyndhurst Community Association in Edmondson Village. I am also a member of Edmondson Westside High School School Family Community Council. I am here this evening to ensure the principal selection process at Edmondson Westside High School is fair and in the best interest of the students, families, partners, and staff of Edmondson Westside High School. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public comment is Carla Harris. Agenda topic is April is Autism Acceptance Month. Also live in person.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to address you again. Some of you may recall. Thank you for your work and your leadership. As I stated in the last meeting, last year I was given the opportunity to serve a group of small children who had been diagnosed with autism. It was very eye-opening, almost as much as it was challenging. I could not comprehend how I might be able to parent one of these children by myself without a full staff. And so I committed the first week to go and learn as much as I could about autism to be able to help myself and the children in this work. The first thing I learned, autism is lifelong. I was surprised to learn, we are learning, that there are conditions that mimic autism that are not lifelong. This is the point that is unheard, but researched, proven, and in place. And my question this evening is, how will you, commissioners, inform families living with autism and families in Baltimore City in general? How will you inform them that there are conditions that can mimic autism and need to be tested in their children and eliminated to ensure that their child actually does have autism, or if they had, perhaps they have one of the conditions that mimic autism, such as mold, T. gondii, heavy metals, free glutamate, pesticides, non-celiac gluten sensitivity, VOCs, the preservative calcium propionate, and tick-borne illnesses, to name a few. All of these are documented by our universities, private practice, doctors, and so it goes. How will we get the information out? What's my channel? What's my conduit? How do I do this? The children are coming in younger and younger, more and more. We set up programs for this by survey. Parents, teachers, psychiatrists fill out a survey and then average, and if it's over a certain amount, the child has autism. There is no lab test, but for autism, but for the conditions that mimic autism, there are lab tests. And once it is shown that the child has mold or the child has had T. gondii exposure, those things can be treated. And the literature shows when the levels are reduced, the severity of the autism symptoms are reduced as well. How do we tell the parents? The doctors have not heard.
Can you close? Time.
Time
If
is
you want to
up.
close up.
That's a question. How do I get answer to that?
I was just gonna ask okay, great. I see our CAO and our interim head of special education in the back. And if you walk towards the back, they will be more than happy to meet with you further. It's okay. Now you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that was our last public comment.
Thank you. We had several committees that met over the past couple of weeks since our last meeting. As it has become our practice, we are going to begin with our Student Commissioner Lawson for his report and remarks, followed by Commissioner Muhammad, who stepped up for the Operations Committee last week. Commissioner Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. As stated in my last remarks at our last public board meeting, I am starting to begin the transition between the student commissioner seat, or myself in the student commissioner seat. So when I go out to schools, I start to introduce the role rather than myself to start to engage students with the seat instead of, myself. And in alignment with that, I met with the YAR Youth as Resources board last Friday, the 19th. And during this meeting, I hope answer any questions. I often find that there's a lot of misconceptions within our student population. So it's my job, student commissioner, to clear those up. So I had a great meeting with them. I also pointed them in the right direction around concerns about school safety. And I hope to answer some of those questions and set up further meetings. And that concludes my remarks this evening. Just starting to transition out of the role and bring more people into the role.
Good evening. The Operations Committee met and thankfully we were able to review the Blueprint Implementation Plan, which included, excited to say, stakeholder engagement. There will be a town hall. There's a town hall scheduled for the 4th of next month. We also were able to review the 24-25 implementation of the Carowin resources. But I'm excited to announce the athletic field upgrades that we will hear from later on, but they have the potential to impact the school we are in now, the Reach community. And we had some staff here from Edmondson. They have the potential to support Edmondson as well. That is our update for the Operations Committee. Thank you for the opportunity.
Safety and Wholeness also met, Commissioner Muhammad. So it's right there. You're right there on it.
All right, we're going right back to it. So the Safety and Wholeness Committee met last week, and we had the opportunity to review the school safety plan, the school safety update, which included reports from school police. We were pleased to have the report around mental health and support services in our schools. There was a presentation from a community partner, the movement team, who highlighted the work that they've been doing around reduction of violence. And we wanted to thank the support of Lead Walk, their work that they are doing to support safety and wholeness as a committee around supporting the advisory that the work that's being done around mental health, emotional support within our schools, and the work being done within community to assure that our students feel safe and their families feel safe with them going to and coming home from schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Commissioner Muhammad? Commissioner Lawson?
I would just like to add something that our school police survey is currently out. So we would like to increase engagement around that. So if you're a student, if you are part of a school's team, please make sure that your students and your staff fill out the survey so that we can get the best data possible.
Any additional thoughts for Commissioner Lawson, Commissioner Mohammed? Thank you, Commissioner Esposito. There was a policy committee meeting.
Yes, the policy committee met on April 16th. And we received updates on policy KCB for volunteers. We got to see updates about the PI portal, updates to screening, including fingerprinting and background checks. So the timeline for the policy is currently they're doing stakeholder engagement throughout April and May. Our first reader will be June 11th, and then we'll continue stakeholder engagement in June and July. And the second reader will be on July 23rd. We also received a compliance report for IHCAB, access to an appropriate physical education program. So this ensures that students have access to an appropriate physical education program, and it's going to focus on continuous improvement of guidance to identify students who may qualify for adapted physical education services. Our next meeting will be May 21st from 4 to 5:30, and we meet virtually. The agenda items that we have are JFBB, which is Student in State Supervised Care. We have revisions to address the changes of state law and consider transfer of policy implementation responsibilities to, and then we have compliance reports for FCA, closing of schools, JIH, school administrative searches and seizures, IKEB, graduation standards, IKEA, promotion and retention in grades K through 12. And in the policy committee, we do have 5 spots that are available for public comment. You can sign up in advance. You can't sign up the day of the policy committee meeting, but sign up opens at 9 a.m. on the Thursday before the meeting and stays open until 5 p.m. the Monday before the meeting date. And to get information on how to provide public comment, you can visit our website. So we welcome any feedback on any of those policies.
Thank you. Any questions for Commissioner Esposito? Any thoughts? Thank you. And to all of the members of the various communities that make up our beautiful city, all of our committee meetings are open to the public. So you're welcome to attend those. You're welcome to provide feedback, to chime in, to be an active participant in those meetings. So please, we encourage you to attend those committee meetings in addition to these public board meetings. Those committee meetings are where we go a little deeper in board work. Based on public comments, are there any additional items that board members would like to pull from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to pull 9.03 for an update on stakeholder engagement and feedback that occurred between first and second reader.
Is someone able to speak to 9.03 now? It's the policy ADF, the wellness policy. It's specific for where we are with stakeholder engagement and feedback. That's what we're answering.
Yeah, so we need to narrow that focus just on that.
Between first reader and second reader, just if there's any update on the engagement.
Come and speak to some other pieces. I will say majority of the stakeholder engagement, they are included in the PowerPoint slides that are posted. We have received additional feedback from school leaders, especially around the changes to the nutrition standards and mealtime climate. We have received additional feedback from students, both as individuals, and we had 4 different classes that submitted feedback on those, and so those have been incorporated. Is there any, I guess, specific regulations we want to ask, or there was additional engagement around ADFRD.
So specifically for that, we were able to, meet with the committee and get additional feedback there or share additional revisions to the policy as it related to wholeness, specifically as it related to making sure that our definition was updated to reflect the work that is currently happening. And then we also made sure that we added additional revisions into the policy that reflected the current work, the updated work.
Thank you. I think it's just critically important that we lift that up, given the amount of interest that we've received in terms of making sure that the policies and regulations really do reflect the needs that are facing our school leaders, our students as well in this realm. So I just want to lift that up and thank you for taking that opportunity to collect that additional feedback and incorporate that where appropriate. So thank you, thank you.
Commissioner Mohammed.
The committee, Homeless Committee would also like to thank you for the work that was done between the first reader and the second reader. Your responsiveness to our request is seen in the work and within the policy. And we just want to highlight the great work and the time that was put into our request.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 9.04?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Slater Harrington, is there a second?
Second, Esposito.
Thank you, Commissioner Esposito. All in favor, Vice Chair Roberts. Thank you, Commissioner Coy.
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito.
Yes.
Commissioner Kenyatta Bay.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson. Commissioner Mohammed.
Yes.
Commissioner Sally.
Yes.
Commissioner Slater Harrington.
Yes.
I am also in favor. That motion passes with 8 in favor and 2 absent. Due to the incorporation of all substantive information from Board Policy IHCAB, access to an appropriate physical education, into Board Policy ADF that was just adopted, wellness, nutrition, and physical activity, and the accompanying administrative regulations, I'm moving that the board repeal Board Policy IHCAB in accordance with Board Policy BGF, suspension, repeal, or waiver of policy. Is there a second?
Second, Sally.
Thank you, Commissioner Sally. All in favor, Vice Chair Roberts? Commissioner Coy?
Yes.
Commissioner Esposito?
Yes.
Commissioner Kenyatta Bay?
Yes.
Commissioner Mohammed?
Yes.
Commissioner Sally?
Yes.
Commissioner Slater Harrington?
Yes.
I'm also in favor. That motion passes with 8 in favor and 2 absent. We'll now move into item 10.01, first reader of policy IKA, grading and reporting.
Good evening. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you, commissioners, for the time to present IKA, our grading and reporting policy. Let me go ahead and bring that up. Give me one moment, I apologize. Happy to present this policy today. This is first reader for the grading and reporting policy. This policy covers many of the board priorities, but certainly thinking about the ways that we focus on rigorous and relevant instruction for our students, the way we support our administrators and staff in supporting our students, and the way we engage our stakeholders. And I would just note with this policy that this stakeholder engagement has been ongoing, but will be ongoing through this process. We are continuing to solicit feedback, much as you heard from policy ADF, because we know that the more we talk about this, the more people get engaged in this, and we want to continue to be open to the various perspectives that we hear from our community. We can go to the next slide and look at the agenda. I also would like to provide just a bit of context that our state is also looking at grading policies as well. And so just want to make sure that the board is aware and our public is aware that there may be some changes that are made by our State Board of Education that would have an impact on policy. We are continuing through our process and our engagement here in Baltimore. And we know that we need to have our policies in line with this state. And so just encourage everyone to continue to stay engaged in this conversation. We will share what we are learning from the state and how our state chooses to move related to grading policy. And what we are presenting right now is our current best thinking here in Baltimore. So one of the places I want to start as we talk about grading philosophy and just our context is looking at the principles undergirding our grading policy. And that is that both the district has a role and our schools have a role. And in order for our policy to be implemented well, we know that this has to take place in partnership. You can go to the next couple slides for me. Thank you. So to shift to the historical context, it's always just helpful to be reminded that our policy as it currently exists has relatively recently been codified. In 2011, we had our first grading policy put into place from longstanding practices that existed across schools. Certainly, our students were getting grades, but it was not in a policy format like we know it right now. In 2019, we came back to review our grading policy and really refined our grading practices. There are 4 key shifts that I'd want to highlight for you. The first being that we increased the expectation of our grading for core classes from twice a month to once a week. We also shifted our assessments so that they counted for 70% of a student's final grade. In addition to that, we gave students the opportunity to reassess in order to earn a higher grade. And we put in place some clear guidelines for how grade changes need to take place. There are a variety of reasons why a school may need to change a student's grade, and we wanted to make that clear and put some bounds and guidelines around that. I want to talk about assessments a little bit because I know in 2019, when I had the privilege of looking at this policy then, assessments came up quite a bit. And so wanted to just reiterate our intent with assessments, which is that they are not just tests and exams. They're not just paper pencil questions 1 through 10 or 1 to 50, right? But they could be a variety of different things. I don't want to read all of these, but I would highlight, for instance, thinking about the CTE students we heard Dr. Gresham speak about tonight, our pharmacy students who are learning a variety of different things that they demonstrate with performance-based assessments, right? They are able to show that they have a particular skill. We also know that in our science classes, there are lab reports where students are actually manipulating materials and seeing what happens, and then as a result, writing about their findings, and that's another form of assessment. So when I speak about assessment, I want to be clear that I'm not just talking about a paper or pencil quiz or a test. Also want to talk about how we use our assessments. So there are different uses. We give these assessments different names. And so we talk about diagnostic assessments. We use these assessments to be able to understand what a student knows and is able to do prior to instruction. We talk about formative assessments, ways that we can measure how a student is learning information or skills during the course of instruction. And formative assessments are really helpful because teachers can use them, both these and the diagnostic assessments, to understand how they need to adjust their instruction, right? And then summative assessment allows us to measure what a student has learned at the end of a period of instruction. It might be the end of a module, it might be the end of a unit, it might be the end of a marking period. And so teachers are using summative assessments as well. So to continue, I want to just make sure that everyone is grounded in our current policy, where we have 4 key sections. One talks about our philosophy of grading as a district, the components of a grade, school-based grading practices, and specific guidance for students with disabilities and English learners. Just want to make a quick note that the components of a grade, well, let me talk about students with disabilities and English learners, and just want to highlight a language change that you will see that I don't think I highlighted later in the presentation, so I want to mention it now. And that's wherever it says English learners, we have shifted to multilingual learners, which is the language that we are using as a district now and that we are using as a state. And so when you see a reference to English learners, it's because I'm referencing the current policy, and that's the technical language that's in there. As we look at our regulations, we know that our policy sets the frame, but our regulations provide more detail about how the policy should be implemented. And the regulations provide more details about reporting grades. Again, 1 grade per week in our core content areas, reporting grades. And so we have grading components, assessments, classwork, participation, and homework. I mentioned reassessment earlier. We have different grades that we use for different grade bands, and you see that noted there. Grade change guidelines and request forms I referenced before. It's how schools officially request a grade to be changed and document that. How we navigate attendance and grading, and in particular, want everyone to be clear that we do not incorporate attendance into our grades at city schools. We trust that the instruction is not to be missed. And it is so meaningful that our students, we don't need to incorporate a student's attendance into their actual grade. But we do want to note that when a student has an extended time when they need to be out of school for whatever reason, it may be an illness or something like that, that we give them the appropriate amount of time to make up that work. We have numeric and letter grade equivalents. A 90 is an A-, that type of thing. We know that our grades are rounded to the nearest percentage point. And then again, we have specific guidance on grading for our students with disabilities and our multilingual learners. There were a few updates that were made to the grading policy in the fall. And in this public forum, I just want to make sure that I highlight these. The first is, again, as I referenced at the very beginning, we always want to make sure that what City Schools is doing is aligned with the state's policy. And so the state made a shift to the policy to require that end of course exams that the state administers account for 20% of a student's final grade. That started with the students who were first-time 9th graders this school year, and their state biology and American government exam scores now count as 20% of their final grade. So we had a cohort who already did this for first semester. We have another group that will be taking these exams in really the next month or so. I mentioned the attendance and grading, and again, we want to make sure students have a reasonable amount of time to complete their work when they're out. And we made a shift that when a student takes a reassessment and earns a higher grade, because they have learned, our goal is for students to learn the content. When they can demonstrate that they've learned the content, they get that higher grade in the grade book. It's not an average, they get that higher grade. Next slide. So I want to highlight our policy changes that we are proposing. They fall in roughly in 4 different categories. And so we're going to talk about best practices. We'll talk about grading language shifts. We'll talk about frequently encountered student situations and how we are navigating both school autonomy and wanting to provide equitable experiences across schools with a common district standard. As was highlighted in our March 12th board meeting, we took the initiative to contract with a firm to conduct an external grading performance review. This performance review reviewed our grade changes as a district. They got a large audit and looked through all the grade changes. They looked at our policies and practices, and they looked at the forms that schools are required to use for grade changes, as well as what we are required to submit to the state related to grade changes. And we got some useful information from that review, including just an external validation of our practices. Next slide, please. The reason we decided to pursue this was threefold. We knew that this policy update was coming, and so it was a good time to get some external input on to inform our policy update. We knew that the state requires an audit every year, and so this would help us meet that requirement. And we also had committed to this audit, this review, as a result of the Office of the Inspector General of Education's review of our grades and grade changes. As part of our response, we said in June 2022, we will do our own external audit and share the results publicly. So key takeaways for those who may not have been able to join us March 12th. The firm, Alvarez and Marsal, found no evidence of widespread grade manipulation in city schools during the 22-23 school year. Particular highlight is 4, that's right, 4 grades were changed out of a total of how many, Dr. Pfeiffer? Oh, that were changed from failing to passing out of how many total? So out of 16 million grading records. Out of 16 million. That's right. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 16 million. Thank you, Dr. Pfeiffer. Thank you, Dr. Sansalistas. The grade changes were limited, as was noted, in their scale and impact. And we did recognize that actually when grades were being changed, it was because there was no grade in the grade book, and then the grade was shifted to put a grade in the grade book. And so certainly we want our students to have grades. We are digging into and working to understand the root causes of late grade entry, but just want to be clear that that's what the grade changes were, as opposed to students failing and then having a lot of grades changing to passing or vice versa. There were no grades, and then grades were entered. And the grade changes took place most in the greatest proportion at the elementary level. As we look at a key highlight from the report, it was noted that our grading policy is stronger and more comprehensive than many peer districts. And so admittedly, you saw in the earlier slide, we said we wanted to use this opportunity to look at best practices in other districts. And what we found was that actually we are one of the stronger districts, which is encouraging. And there were some areas that we could introduce additional clarity. And so really wanting to be clear about when are there exceptions that are allowable, when it is okay to do something different than the stated rule, and how do we codify what that might be? What are staff responsibilities? How can we make those clear, and who is accountable and in what ways? They also found that there's an opportunity for us to continue training and communication, and we are certainly working to improve in that way. There was also finding that while there were there was not widespread changing in inappropriate ways. Grade change forms were not always being used appropriately. And so that's really a point of growth for us, to have the forms completed and to be completed accurately and fully, with no missing information. So there were several recommendations we received. Certainly I referenced timely grade entry, and that's something that we're thinking about as we look at this policy. Also want to highlight that, the district offices, Office of Achievement and Accountability, the academic office, our school office all work together as it relates to grading. But there's some more specificity that we could put in the policy, because sometimes saying the district was not very user friendly for a staff member who needed to know which office they needed to call or go to. We want to make sure that it's very clear and much easier, both for principals and for our instructional leadership executive directors who supervise principals, to be able to access the grades to see where there may be issues before they become major issues. And so that's work that was recommended. And then also I referenced this allowable exceptions. One of the things that we've experienced is that schools sometimes need an extended time to get grades in. And we have a process for that that's internal but not clearly documented in our policy, and that's something that we want to look at adding. Variety of reasons why schools might need grading window extended, and I'm happy to talk about that if you have questions. Do want to note, I mentioned that the Office of the Inspector General for Education had done a review. Certainly after Alvarez and Marsal's review came out, we received some positive feedback about the work that we did. So in response to the policy recommendations, one of the things that we are going to do is to develop a grading and reporting manual. If you look at our policy and our regulations, they are helpful frames. They are not a guidebook for a teacher who's stuck in a tricky grading situation, and they're not really intended to be. So we need another document that will do that. We also want to continue to clarify our roles and responsibilities of various staff members and emphasize the separation of roles where we need to stay away from any appearance of impropriety. We want to continue to clarify our grading expectations, and I'll speak about those in a moment, so I won't dwell here. But make sure that we can also revise our grade change forms so they're easier to use, easier to analyze, that they require less manual work. So to the proposed changes, we want to make sure that we are working with common definitions. I referenced some definitions at the earlier looking at assessments, but there are a variety of words that to people outside of education might sound like jargon that we want to just be clear about so that families can understand what some of these terms mean and have easier access to that, and we'll use the same definitions across the district. As we think about increasing consistency across schools, we want to look at reassessments, specifically having schools develop clear guidance on what assignments can be reassessed. We have heard that this is an area where we could have a little bit more clarity. And so we want to be clear that reassessments need to follow reteaching or some demonstration that the student has learned, has acquired new learning. We want to make sure that parents and students are very clear about the reassessment guidance. We want to also make sure that they're very clear about what the reassessment guidance is for a particular assignment, so that they know whether they can take that assessment over again, they can redo that lab report, they get another chance to show that they can take blood pressure. We also know that student transfers have created challenges with grading in the system, and sometimes the late grade entry that we saw was a result of grades being in transit from one place to the next. And so we want to provide more clarity on the timeliness of when those grades need to come, how to grade a student who comes in the middle of a marking period, and just simply how to make sure that you're requesting those grades so you can get them in as soon as possible. So that's an area, again, as we think through late grade entry, as we have talked to various stakeholders, we understand that to be a clear point of one of the causes that we need to address. I want to shift to some new language that we are proposing for our second through fifth graders. The language on the left, excellent, good, satisfactory, poor, and unsatisfactory is what we have used for years. We are proposing changing this language because we do not feel, well, we feel that there's an opportunity for us to be a little bit more precise in what these words mean about what a student knows and is able to do. We are proposing the language that's on the right, meeting standards, approaching standards, developing towards standards, and not yet demonstrating progress towards standards, as a way of being clear for our students, for our families, about how a student is performing according to the grade level standards that the teacher is using to create lessons, and then to assess students' understanding of what's been taught in those lessons. And so as we have taken this around, just kind of, we have heard from our families that this generally has felt better to them, that they have understood it more clearly. There will still be percentages that are included in the grade so that a family will be able to see whether their student has a 73, but they also will know that a 73 means approaching standards. We also, I referenced frequently encountered circumstances, and that sometimes our policy or regulations are not a very effective guidebook for a teacher who's trying to navigate some nuances. One of those that we want to be clear about is that the grading window closes at the end of the term. And this is not new information. We're just reaffirming that students have the time through the end of the term to work, and that teachers have that time to grade, and that we are not going to kind of scoop the end of, or when things are due earlier than the end of that marking period. Meaningful feedback we received both from teachers and from students about how that's affecting them. And so we really want to support them in that. I will note that in the calendar that the board approved last week, we've also included an early release day at the end of each marking period to also support teachers with time to finish grading. We want to update our grade change guidance. The first thing is by shifting to one electronic form instead of two. So whether you're making a grade change within a marking period or after, or if you're changing a final grade, there would be one form that could be used. We want to figure out a way to distinguish whether a grade coming in is a late grade entry or a grade change from one number to another, just for our own tracking of how we're making progress with late grade entry. We want to be able to include information that makes our grade changes easier to track, both in our Infinite Campus system and as grade changes are submitted. One of the things that we experienced as we went through this external review was that it became a very manual process at some point because our systems don't always talk to each other. And so we just need to figure out how we are going to make that connection happen, and we're committed to that. Want to highlight additional training. We want to be able to provide meaningful training for our teachers and resources that help them where they are. And we know that in the midst of the school day, it may be a little bit tricky for them to get information about grading. It may be that they need something that they can access after school if they choose to do so. So we want to have asynchronous videos available to them that they can use at the time that's most convenient for them. We also want to invest, as we did this year, in our new educator summer experience for our first year teachers to ensure that they are getting this information as soon as they come in and know where to find resources. So one of the recommendations that continue to come up both from our both from the grading performance review and from a number of the stakeholders we engaged was a desire for clarity on what every school needs to do and where schools can be different. In general, we are working toward having a district's default of sorts that works for everyone. And then if schools want to increase, for instance, the weight of assessments, they could, but they need to at least maintain our district minimum of 70%. When we look at reassessment, we are looking at schools providing clear guidelines there. And again, I'll just want to engage our community in ongoing conversation. We know reassessment has been a hot button topic that we are continuing to hear and get more feedback on. So we certainly would love to hear additional thinking as we look at reassessment, but no matter where we land, it must be clear for students and families what can be reassessed. When we look at grades per course, we want to be clear that really grading frequency, that schools can increase but not decrease the number of grades required. So if they decide that they want to have one grade every week in a subject where it's not currently required, for instance, like PE, a school could make that determination, but they could not decrease it. And then we want to continue to reaffirm the district's role in providing support, as well as the school's role in supporting implementation. We want to clarify how we will review school-based grading guidelines so that everyone is clear, and that schools that do not submit any school-specific guidelines, which they absolutely do not have to do, they are fine to just stick with the district expectation, they would, by May 1, shift to the district default, right? So that everyone will be clear by the beginning of the school year what that grading expectation is at that school. In the past, just for context, we have gone to each school to say, do you have your guidelines? Do you have your guidelines? And we are fine just working with the district default approach. And then we've worked with our Office of New Initiatives to look at the grading language that is in our charter and operator-led schools policy. And we've brought some of that language into our grading policy, so it is all in one place. And we've been more specific about where charters have autonomy, recognizing that they too are welcome to use the district's grading policy as their default as well. The next two slides highlight the many opportunities we have had to engage our community, and I just want to thank so many folks who came out to give us feedback on this policy and regulations. What we heard through some surveys that were done by our external performance review firm, from our teachers and principals, we heard their wide range of grading and reassessment practices taking place, and we heard that they would love to have more streamlined ways of monitoring grades coming in, and so that's informed our thinking. We also have heard that schools are looking for more clarity about students who are transferring and students who are chronically absent, and so that's information that parts of it will go in our policy, parts of it will be in a grading manual to provide that support. We can go to the next couple of slides here. And then as we go to the next slide and look at key themes from our community engagement, we have heard a desire, as I've referenced, for consistency in the policy across schools. We know many of our students transfer and want to have consistency as they move from school to school, a desire for grading policies to be easier to find and easier to understand. And we have had significant support for the new grading language that I showed you earlier. As I mentioned, our engagement is ongoing, and there's more conversations with students to be had. We are looking at conversations with our 2nd to 5th graders to hear how this new grading language, how they understand that. We also are creating a video to be disseminated through our student government associations to different high schools with a survey link where they'll be able to give us feedback that way. Same approach actually with our teachers, and we will be sending out this week a video that will allow our teachers to give additional feedback in addition to the surveys they provided in January. We are working with Mr. Perry, who we saw earlier, to get additional time with our school leaders. And we are looking to focus our conversations with families on those 3 areas that you see, the grade entry and how parents are understanding when their students' grades are coming in, reassessment and how they understand what is able to be reassessed, and then again, the grading scale and the change of that language. So thank you for the time, and we will be back in May. Happy to take.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pfeiffer. I see a few commissioners who would like to chime in as well. So I appreciate your work and the work of the team with this. I know the board appreciates this. I know we've had several stakeholders, right, engage, not only with you all, but with us around the policy. I know that Commissioner Lawson spent some time as well with his peers, but also with himself, right? Going through this. I just have a couple of thoughts. When we think of formative assessments, right, we're thinking of that could look a lot of different ways, right? I can formatively assess a student in conversation. As I'm pacing my classroom, there are certain look fors that I'm looking for to see if students are making progress toward mastery of the objective. I think the language of formative assessment versus summative assessment, I'm throwing out something, right, as a thought. So if we're grading it, could we consider something like a minor assessment versus a major assessment, right, to maybe clear up some ambiguity with teachers as they're engaging in, work with students and with their classes. I think that may be helpful to kind of clear up misconceptions for them, but also to students, right? Because I can submit a homework assignment, as you all have introduced here in the policies and language around, in the regulations specifically around homework, right? That can be considered formative, but I may not grade that. Right, I may not weigh that in your overall grade, but it's formative information for me as a practitioner to best support the needs of my students. So I think that could be helpful, and I'm hoping that you all consider just that language change. I'm not sure how the full team thinks about it, but I think that could be helpful. I think I mentioned to you before, I'm not pointing to you, I'm rolling on my sleeve. I had a 4th grade student reach out to me about a test that they took, and they got a bad grade on it, and it affected their overall, average. I think just changing some of that language, that minor, major assessment could help. It's just a recommendation that I hope you all will consider. I appreciate the language in the regulation around the redo, right? As educators, I just want to throw this out there too. I don't think that it is fair, and I appreciate some of the language in the regulation around the time for making it up or redoing it. There's also language in the regulation that says the assessment may change, right, if a student does it again. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Pfeiffer, right? Like, should it be the same assessment that the student takes, or should it be a modified assessment that a student takes that still is aligned to the objectives, still aligned? I'm just curious to know, like, what your thoughts are. Do I give my student who's seen this assessment before the exact same thing, you take it, right? Or do I modify it? It does take a little additional work, but I think that best or better captures whether or not a student is understanding or not. Are you following?
I am following you, and actually had a conversation with our content leads in our teaching and learning office about this very question. And I think I think we all saw the merits in having a different assessment that looks at the same content standards and allows the teacher to understand whether a student has learned them. I think part of our conversation was, what is the support that we might be able to provide? Because our intent is not to create an undue burden for our teachers as we're thinking through how they are going through this practice of reassessment. And so I think there will probably be a little bit of work and support that we're able to provide at the district level, and some that we're asking of our teachers to be able to serve our students well in that way.
I appreciate that, but respectfully, I think it's important that, I mean, if there is additional work that may need to be done to reassess a student, in all fairness, I think we should consider that in reassessing a student's mastery. So yeah, maybe a little additional work that may need to be done, but also within the policy, there are multiple ways to assess, right? And you were clear about that, right? So it does not necessarily have to be in the same form. But I think in fairness for students, as we're looking to improve outcomes for them and, you know, just to help them progress better, I think that's a consideration. I appreciate that. But I think as practitioners and as folks who are committed to the betterment of our children, I think that little extra work could be beneficial for the student overall. And then I just, two more brief things, because I know that there are other commissioners. But I see the pluses and the minuses after the letters. What is the reasoning for that? Why aren't we just doing the A, the B, the C, D? Why do we have? Because there are a couple of places within the regulation. I think I'm on page 13 in the regulation. And it's the calculation of grade point average. I believe this is for grade 6 through 12. Right, we have the standard, the honors, and then we have dual enrollment, IB, and the AP. All of the 90 and above, it's all weighed the same. All of the 80 and above, it's all weighed the same. So I'm curious to know, why do we still see the pluses, the regulars, standalone, and then the minuses? It's a small thing, it's technical, but if we're looking at the policy, let's talk about it.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. We have discussed that. The initial intent was to be able to provide some distinction for our students as they were, looking at their progress as measured by grades. And I will note, we looked at the range of things we were reopening in this policy, and frankly made a call that we weren't going to address that right at this time. But I appreciate we had a discussion about it. Happy to reopen it and take a look while we're looking at this policy.
I appreciate the distinction, what you mentioned. I also think it aligns to some of the language in those earlier grades where we had the excellent, the good, the poor versus meeting standards or approaching standards. I think there's alignment there. It's a question, I just think while we have it, let's talk about it. I don't think it's necessary. I think the standalone grade is fine. If you all in the team of experts think that's fine, open to the rest of the board to hear what they think as well. And then finally, I just am bringing up feedback that teachers provide to students on the assignments that they do. Is it appropriate for us to specify what that feedback requirement is, right? If I'm doing an assignment, do I just give you a letter grade, or are we able to, is it appropriate in the regulation or in the policy to just specify something about the feedback that teachers are required to provide to students to help them monitor their own progress and to meet the expectations or exceed the expectations? I think if we just look at, I get an assignment and you see a letter grade on it without any type of feedback, I don't think that is always helpful. Yeah, it can speak to maybe achievement. I did this, I got everything right, but what can I improve upon? And if I get a poor grade, how can I improve upon that? And so I'm just wondering if there is a way, if it is appropriate, to specify some of that language in some way, shape, or form in the regulation, and your thoughts on that.
So I think that we can definitely take a look at the regulation. What I can say much more confidently right now at this moment is that the manual will be a wonderful place
Okay.
for us to include examples of best practice. And
Gotcha.
so part of what we're developing is, here's the district's minimum requirement for grading frequency. Here is what would be useful to a student to be able to understand how they're progressing along the way. And I think there's some opportunity that we have to be able to really highlight best practices as we are enhancing our training for our teachers.
Got it. So it may not necessarily be the best place in policy or regulation, but in the manual, more of that guidance can be provided.
Absolutely.
It'll be helpful for us to also see that or have access to manual, not to necessarily weigh, but to just see that and accompaniment to the policy and the regulation. Vice Chair Roberts. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. In the regulation on page 2, letter I, there's a reference to students that may have been found to have cheated or plagiarized. Does the team have any insight within current discussions or from the state guidance around the use of artificial intelligence?
That's an excellent question. We are definitely, that is one of the topics that is a point for internal conversation that we are currently having. I think that I know that our teams have begun to do their own work to think through how we can support our schools in being able to navigate this new world in which we live, in which artificial intelligence can provide a lot of support on assignments. And so I'd say that work is ongoing and isn't necessarily captured specifically in the regulations, so the consequences for any type of taking someone else's work as your own are captured there.
I do think that before it comes back for a vote, before we receive the finalized version, that we do need to tease that out. With the landscape increasingly becoming more comfortable with artificial intelligence tools, that area, that hard stop for what is plagiarized work, it becomes a gray space. And if this is going to be in part of policy and codified, we need to be a bit more rigid around what we're defining as plagiarized work.
Thank you.
I see Commissioner Slater-Harrington, Commissioner Esposito, and then Sally.
Good evening, Dr. Pfeiffer. I always enjoy your presentations. Thank you so much for the thought that has gone into this process, and I can appreciate it balancing. One, really promoting a atmosphere or a district that is learning. And with the real life burdens that teachers carry and having to do that job. Teachers want to do the best job that they can and are really putting a lot of effort in, but you have to balance all of those things. And so I do appreciate the thought that's going in to this. I was just whispering to Commissioner Lawson and just wanted to amplify something that Vice Chair Roberts said around AI, and that I think that I too want to see that when it comes back, reference, a nod that yes, we're aware of this. Students are using it. It is a tool. And rather than whispering like, hey, don't tell nobody I use this. Recognizing like, okay, this is happening. And it should be acknowledged in our grading policy. This may be an antiquated notion, just around norming. Whether from a content, so all your ELA teachers in the building are getting together, or less needed, I guess, for math, social studies, science, but how we're norming our grades. Listen, my daughter, she talks about rigor. I talked about, I said to Lisa's about this, about rigor, and she knows when teachers are not reading or grading her assignments, and she knows the nuanced difference between how teachers are evaluating. One of the things that was most helpful to me as a former educator is sitting in the room with veteran teachers and other teachers on my team and having it normed, having us all sit there grading assignments and seeing how we're coming up and processing against rubrics, because there still is some ability, right? And so I wonder in the regulation or in the manual, how we're supporting teachers around norming that, and we're bringing parents along with that process. And this could be something that does not need to be addressed here. It just made me think about as well, you said attendance is not part of our grading, but participation is. And how we are clarifying that for parents and students. And there's no ability to make up a participation grade, or is there? And is that a gray area? And for the other gray areas that were acknowledged, how are we monitoring those for trends to see if for future refinement and professional development? So that was a lot in a little.
I appreciate those comments, and even since submitting this presentation to you, we've had additional robust conversations about participation. We also have heard at our student policy forum, we heard from students about where they see norming taking place with grading and where they don't. And so that came up from our students as well, and I appreciate you raising that up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for incorporating some of the feedback that we gave in the policy committee. I know one of the things that Commissioner Sally really emphasized is the need for the terminology and how complicated and complex this, like how robust and complex this policy is. And I did want to thank the other commissioners for raising the AI issue. And the only thing that I'd add to that is just to be mindful of being inclusive for those that do use AI tools for accommodation reasons, because there are more tools available, such as like screen readers and things that do even the playing field for students. It's special education. And yeah, overall, it seems like you all have a good handle on things. And the only thing that I would ask, I did say that I did notice that the data collection process will probably be more streamlined, so it'll be more easily accessible to report out. And yeah, just keep us posted about the state grading policy changes, because I'm curious about how that's going to impact this, or if there's going to be any like contradictions. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for raising that. And I've made a note about inclusivity as we look at it.
Thank you so much. My point is much more about a critical balance, I think, that has to happen as we think about the role of the educator in designing the range of assessments minus summative assessments, but also the role of instructional leaders in our building. And I think there's a critical balance in how we craft policy to ensure that it doesn't bar our educators and it doesn't bar our instructional leaders, but rather provides some safeguards and guardrails for both our educators and our students and scholars in our system. And so I just want to lift that up as a critical tension in this work. And so to the extent as we're working through this policy, the additional work that is going to transpire with stakeholder engagement, that we think through how we manage that tension in the best way possible that supports student achievement.
Thank you.
Any additional?
Thank you, Dr. Pfeiffer. And thank you for listening to the concerns around the transfer and the consistency between gradings. That's something that I heard. Excuse me if I missed this in the presentation, but I heard you say a reasonable amount of time to like make up an assignment. Will that be like defined? Will there be a number of days? I was just interested in a reasonable amount of time.
Thank you for asking that. So what the regulation says now is that the student has the same number of days that they were out to complete the work that was missed. And if more time is needed, they can have a discussion with their teacher about that to come to an understanding about what they need and what's possible. So if a student is out an extended illness for 16 school days, they would have 16 school days with which to make up that work. And if they're still not feeling well and they're on the mend, right, and they actually need more than that 16 days, they could go to their teacher and have a discussion about how much more time they would need and come to a conclusion.
I appreciate that. I do have a question about, for instance, myself. Sometimes I do have to leave school for activities, and then we have student athletes, and I also take a number of AP classes and honors classes as well. But if I'm only out for one day, and we have an extended amount of work, and I'm only given one day to catch up on top of the work that I missed, do you think a set amount of days first, and then if I'm out for one day, then you have 3 days to make up an assignment, and then if you're out an extended amount of time, then you'll have the number of days that you were out to make up the assignment. Do you think that would be reasonable, or what's the best practices, or what does other districts do in that scenario?
I really appreciate your question because this is actually one of those areas, like Commissioner Sally mentioned, where really the school, both the teacher, conversation between the teacher and the student and the school leader as needed, really provides a better response, I think, than anything that the district office would try and do blanketly across all schools. And so that's a space where we really want to give the discretion to schools to be able to have that conversation with you and to say, look, let's look at your calendar, right? What does the next month look like? What's due, to use your language, Chair McFadden, what are the major assignments that are coming up? What are the ones that are smaller, right? What are the minor assignments? And then how can we develop a plan together? And I wouldn't want our policy to get in the way of having that conversation.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I had a real quick question. It's basically philosophical because there are two areas in grading, and that is one, accomplishment. We look at various standards that have to be met. But then there's the other area of grading, which is growth. And your policy, as I read here, is it balanced in there for growth assessment versus accomplishment assessment? Because in certain areas, in certain curriculum, you're looking for the amount of growth. Certain things are very hard because you have to accomplish X, Y, and Z. But certain aspects of it are, like I said, it's measurement of growth, and that's an individualistic sort of situation, whereas a student may have grown this much, and so therefore they have accomplished a lot within the area of their achievement. And so there's a balance there that has to be crucial.
So I appreciate that question. I think what we are trying to do is multifold, right? I think we want to be increasingly clear about the grade level standard that we want our students to be able to achieve. And so we know that, the hard work our teachers are putting in is to help instruct, provide instruction that will support students to that. I think the other piece that we want to do is to encourage ongoing student learning. And the intent of the reassessment policy is to be able to say, we want to encourage your learning by saying that the one time you took that assessment, gave that speech, whatever it was, right, doesn't need to be the end of your learning. And so we want to give you time with the teacher to be able to shore up skills that you maybe don't have full command of yet, or maybe to learn content that you didn't get the first time around. And so the growth aspect of it is that we want to invest in your continued learning, right, as you're progressing. And to note, we want to give you credit for that learning by changing your grade as you can demonstrate the learning that you've acquired along the way from the reteaching. And so I don't anticipate that we'll have a growth measure per se, right? But I do think that what a student will experience is that their growth is captured in the updated grades as they learn, assess, reassess, or relearn and reassess and see a higher grade in the process.
Well, I understand that there is an aspect, and like I said, when I say growth, I mean an individualistic growth, okay? And as somebody who grades on a daily basis, you know, I see that XYZ student has made huge jumps, right? And so therefore, I have to give them credit for their accomplishment, even though they approach a standard. They may not meet the full standard and have the opportunity in the future to meet it. But you have to, you know, credit where credit is due, the amount of work that they poured into accomplishing that growth. That's called equity, right? In my mind, you know, equity is saying that, you know, you have really taken great strides on a personal level to reach the level that you reached. I think that's important. Balance. I know that we look at measurements and say, okay, you're 6 foot tall, you're 5 foot tall, but maybe that's where you need to be, you know, at that point in your development. Yeah.
Commissioner, I appreciate you raising that. I think some of it goes back to what you mentioned earlier in that manual, and then also how we were just chatting about feedback as well, right? The feedback that a teacher is able to provide to a student to let them know that, hey, you may not be meeting the standard, but you should know what the standard is, right? You should know what success criteria is. But then how, as an educator, as a practitioner, can I provide that informative information that will then support a student? Because we have goals, rigorous goals to meet, right? And so while we want to see progress, we also, it's important that our students are able to meet standards. And I think some of what you're saying aligns to more of that manual that is being updated. I think that's where your thinking lies, if that makes sense. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pfeiffer. Thank you to your team. And we look forward to, and as always, commissioners, please, you know, if there are questions or thoughts, please send them in so that the team can incorporate that information into the second reader. Thank you very much. We're now going to move to item 10.02, operator renewal process. This is an informational update.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Angela Alvarez, Senior Executive Director of the Office of New Initiatives. I have some colleagues joining me.
Good evening. My name is Trevor Roberts. I'm a specialist in the Office of New Initiatives.
Good evening, all. Teresa Jones, Chief Achievement and Accountability Officer for Baltimore City Public Schools.
All right, and so we're here tonight to kind of
Happy birthday, Chief Jones.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
So we're here tonight to just officially share our 24-25 operator renewal process. Go to the next slide. So this aligns to many of the board priorities, but most closely to board priority 6, where we're seeking to guarantee all schools, including charters, are providing high quality educational experiences. Operator renewals, where we are reviewing operators to make sure they're meeting that goal. The process that we have been using was originally developed in 2012, so about 14 years ago, with a group of stakeholders. So there's been a lot of stability. And as we go through tonight with Trevor and Chief Jones, you'll see that there are certain things that we always look at. There may be some nuance in the weights, there may be some nuance in assessments, but there are certain kind of key criteria that we continue to look at across that period of time. And that aligns with our some of our ideals around renewal, that there are some consistent metrics that operators can understand how they're going to be looked at in the future. There's some clarity around those key things. We can do debriefing processes with stakeholders. That's going to look different this year. As you'll see, we have a large number of schools that are up for renewal. And so actually had to begin the process while you guys were voting on schools that were going through the process. So we had one set starting before we finish with the other set, which is not our norm. And so that will look different. And so we try to have narrow focus changes. And this year we decided to loosely, have one tiny area of change, keep it consistent with the process we utilized last year. And so there are 18 schools that are up for renewal. So I'm going to turn it over to Trevor.
So schools go through the renewal process either 3, 5, or 8 years, depending on the term of their contracts. And in renewal, we look at a variety of different measures. It's not just a straight look at hard quantitative data. We try to take a holistic view of schools. So we rely, in addition to data, on site visits, stakeholder focus groups, surveys, and the evidence that schools provide in their renewal applications of what they're doing to warrant renewal of their contracts. The renewal rubric is aligned to the charter and operator-led schools policy, IHBJ, and the rubric is split up into 3 main areas: student achievement, which has 50% of the weight of the entire rubric, school climate, and financial management and governance. As Angela mentioned, we do have a number of schools going through this year. I will go through all of these, but there are 18 schools, and this is just the first slide of the list of schools. So we can see these schools, and then on to the next slide. This represents more than half of our operator-led schools in the district. And because of this large number of schools, we did start the process earlier than usual. So we had an orientation for schools going through renewal in January. During the winter and now into the spring, we were doing preliminary work, including special education site visits. The 5 essential survey was administered, and we're currently doing school effectiveness reviews, which are another site visit that looks at school practices that I'll talk about a little more later. Over the summer, schools will be working on their renewal applications. To assist them with that, we will be providing them with data tables that will have a lot of the data that they will use as evidence in their applications. Applications are due in early September. That kicks off our review process. The review process is a multi-level review that starts with the Charter and Operator-led Schools Advisory Board. They do the initial review of applications and make a recommendation to the CEO. The CEO then does her own administrative review of the applications and makes recommendations to the board, which will be coming in November. After the recommendations, there will be an operator work session, which is the opportunity for school operators to get up in front of the board, present on their programs, and take any questions that you may have for them. And the vote on the recommendations will be happening in January. So I want to start going over the academic section rubrics. The first three metrics that we look at in academics are for state assessments. We are going to look at that a little more in depth in just a moment, so I'm not going to talk too much about that, but we do look at absolute performance, trend, and growth. The next thing we look at is the fidelity to charter and application overall. This is where we look at how schools are meeting the promises that they make in their charter application, how they are measuring progress towards meeting the promises made in their charter application, and how they are reacting to any challenges that have arisen in that area. Then we look at programming for all student, racial, and ethnic groups. This is a measure that only applies to schools with diverse student bodies. Here we're looking at both practices that schools are implementing to make sure that all student groups are receiving high quality programming that recognizes and honors their culture and background. But we are also looking at the data and achievement of different student groups to make sure that those practices are translating into higher achievement for all student groups. For high schools, we look at college and career readiness and graduation rate. And finally, we look at the findings of the 5 Essentials survey. The 5 Essentials is a survey instrument that has about 20 years of data and research backing it that shows that the outcome of the survey is predictive of improvement in school performance in the future. Turn it over to Chief Jones to talk about our state assessment measures.
Great, thank you, Trevor. As Trevor indicated, we take a look at assessments essentially in 3 ways historically. You'll see that there are some notable differences in this particular iteration, just based on the characteristics of our MCAP data and the timeline for which the new MCAP has been administered. But first and foremost, the absolute measure. It is, again, one of the 3 ways that we look at performance. It is based on the most recent year's performance on the assessment. One of the things that we wanted to note is that, like we did last year, we'll continue to look at the average performance level of schools in a tested grade band. And what you see noted here on the bottom is that we are making a provision that allows us to take a look at the proficiency rate and how that compares to the median for a particular poverty index group. And as a reminder, one of the things that we continue to find is a strong correlation between economic disadvantage and absolute performance on state assessments. And this is one of the ways that we've tried to accommodate for that by looking at the comparison of absolute results by way of poverty index groups. And what you'll see noted in this scale is that what we then take a look at is the average performance level. And then when it comes to the assigned rating, if they were to have an average performance level of a 2, 3, or a 4, however, and have their proficiency be 5 percentage points over the median, we would essentially bump them up. That's essentially how that would work. Next slide, please. In most years, when we've had stability of the assessment over time, we've been able to have the trend measure. And unfortunately, we are not in a position to do so for 24-25. And that is really because, as you know, the state changed the assessment from PARCC to the current version of the MCAP, which was a state-designed assessment. And because that 21-22 school year was the first year after the pandemic that assessment was administered, we've decided not to include those results to make that comparison to calculate the trend measure. However, it doesn't mean that we don't think that trend might be a meaningful measure to include in future processes. So we have noted that we will reassess the inclusion of trend in future rounds of renewal based on what we learn about the assessment and the circumstances. The third measure is around growth. And I know there's particular interest in this particular area. And so again, when we take a look at growth, the way we look at growth here is looking at individual student growth. So to Commissioner Kenyattabe's earlier point, this is one of the ways that we're able to factor in those individualized improvements into the process. In this case, we're actually taking a look at those improvements over multiple years. So what you'll see noted here for 24-25 is that we would actually be utilizing the student growth percentiles in mathematics and English language arts from the 2022, 2023, and 2024 administrations, which is another way of taking a look at more and more students and what impact a school might be having on their ability to demonstrate proficiency on these assessments. The other thing that we also note for this process is that while we tend to rely heavily on the state assessments, we do provide an option for those schools that might want consideration for an alternative assessment. If that is indeed the case, there's certain criteria that have to be met, and they would have to submit that request to the Office of New Initiatives by the end of May, by May 30th.
So moving into the climate section of the rubric, our first three measures in climate are from the school effectiveness review. The school effectiveness review is a 2.5-day site visit that uses classroom observations, stakeholder focus groups, and document review to get a deep look at schools' practices. So in that school effectiveness review, we use talented people, vision and engagement, and highly effective instruction in the climate section. Then we look at family satisfaction survey results. We look at cohort retention, which is a measure that looks at the percentage of students who remain at a school at least 2 years after entry. For student attendance and chronic absence and suspensions for those two metrics, those are looking at both data and school practices to not just see how schools are performing in those areas, but how are they achieving that performance and encouraging students to come to school every day and to have good behavioral practices. Finally, in the last metric we look in this section is effective programming for students with disabilities. This is a holistic look at how schools are serving these students, and it looks at a variety of measures, including separate site visit, data, and pretty much everything that we can find on school practices in that area. Moving on to the last section of the rubric, it's financial management and governance. The first metric in this area is audit content and financial controls. Our finance department takes a look at school audits to make sure that the operating organization is being a good steward of public funds, and just as importantly, that they are in financial health so that they will remain going concern. Our operating organizations are essentially small businesses, and we need to make sure that they are financially healthy so that they can continue to support the school that they operate. The next thing we look at here is operator capacity. This is the operating organization's ability to meet critical federal and state laws and regulations, and also district requirements and their contractual requirements. And finally, we look at another SER measure here, strategic leadership. How is the operating organization providing leadership and vision and guidance for the school? I want to finish up by looking at the rubric weights for these different measures. So looking at academic success, Because in this area, there are different measures depending on the grade band. We have three different weight breakdowns. The high level thing I want to point out is that for schools with elementary and middle grades, the growth measure is the highest weighted measure in those areas. And for high school where we don't have growth measures, we have a lot of different data such as graduation and college and career readiness that gets factored into schools' ratings in that area. Moving on to school climate. For this, we're showing a multi-year look, and we just want to emphasize that starting in 2023-24, we did increase the weight on the effective programming for students with disabilities measure. We thought that that was a really critical area of school performance that we wanted to recognize with a higher weight. That higher weight was taken by slightly reducing the weight of the 3 school effectiveness review measures. And for this upcoming process, we are going to continue using the higher weight for students with disabilities. And finally, in the financial management and governance, here we see we only have 3 measures here. They're all weighted equally. It should be noted that a not effective in any of these measures can lead to the school being rated not effective overall for financial management and governance. And that is because for every one of these measures, if a school is not performing up to par, it could affect the very existence of the school. So, in any of these areas, if the school is not effective, it could, affect the viability of the school moving forward. Questions?
I'll open the floor for questions. Commissioner Koya, for your answers.
Yeah, I do have one question and a request, and this might be as much to our own board office and board leadership as much to you all. As it relates to the number of schools and the process next year, is it possible to have dedicated meetings for this in the calendar? I just can only imagine trying to do these in regular board meetings while we have other items to cover. I don't know what time we'll end board meetings those evenings, and just don't want to not give other things the time that they also need.
Yeah, so we definitely, for the work session, have requested 2 dates. They need to occur one after the other so that there's not some unfair, this community had an extra week kind of prepare for that. But in our board dates requests that we're currently working on on our side of the house, we are requesting 2 dates for that. I think that push is good. You may need to consider, do we need to break up the recommendations? That usually is also a long night, but it's the hearings that can be the longest. So we sort of thought ahead about that. So you'll see that in the board calendar request.
Well, and I certainly do recall in prior years that we have had meetings just for some of those hearings, but I'm also referencing trying to do some of the work on these in regular board meetings. Just feels like it is a recipe for a really long night and not giving other things the attention that they also deserve.
Yeah, and just to make sure I'm understanding exactly what you're saying, you want us to consider doing the presentation of the recommendations and potentially the vote on a special night rather than a regular meeting.
I mean, given the volume of this, it might need to be anything that relates to these 18 processes, like these 18 schools for review, might need to just have a dedicated meeting. Otherwise, I just don't know how we manage that.
It's a good, note it, and we'll follow up on that. Absolutely.
Thank you for flagging, Commissioner Foy. That is something that recently came up, and as staff begins to prepare the proposed calendars for next year, We'll talk about that more in depth at the business meeting in June. But I agree with you that that should be an isolated meeting um, in totality, even if it needs to be a special meeting, because 18 is record setting, and that is a tremendous effort to undertake, especially in one meeting for this small action item. So if we can do that in a very thoughtful way, that would be extremely appreciated by the board. Thank you. Any additional remarks? I'll go there. Go ahead.
The question I just really have is a concern for the unit here, because with 18 capacity and your timeline, do you feel as though your unit has the capacity to cover 18 because it's like there's a snowball to come in flying in the window, so what's going on here as far as capacity?
Yeah, it's going to be tight, but we definitely can do it. We've done it before. Actually, it's the first time that we've had 18 schools up for renewal. So,
But after action reports, you've done it before, so.
done it before.
What problem did you run into when you did it before, or what successes did you do at this capacity, at this weight of coming in at you? Or do you feel as though this is a lot to pick up at one time?
It's a lot, but it's doable. I think we did it before. There was no issues with process or the reporting, and so we intend to deliver again. So we're prepared. Thus, we started earlier. We're doing pre-work. We maintain consistency to help with that. I think we'll be fine. And I think, done some process improvements in the first time that we had that number of schools was like when I was a specialist in O&I. It was my first renewal. It was like 18 schools. But one of the things we have done today is like in the data tables that OAA provides, it comes with some reading. So that really kind of helps with some of the efficacy. Chief Jones' team's also done a lot of thoughtful work around how we present the data and those pieces that I think also helps with having more clarity. It is, a big undertaking. It's going to take a lot of work, but I have faith that we'll deliver.
Thank you, Commissioner Sally, then Commissioner Esposito.
Very briefly, yep, sorry. I appreciate just the thoughtful, hard work that goes into this, but as we're considering that format, we're thinking about how to streamline where necessary so that, we can move through this in a really good pace. Well, I think the entire committee will appreciate that in terms of being able to move through the process. So looking forward to it.
Yes, we can be verbose, so we'll work on it.
I think there's the history is really great, and I think it's really important to set the foundation and making sure we walk through the process. But I think there's ways in which we might consider making sure that people have access to that information earlier through the process. So,
Commissioner Esposito.
Yeah, I was wondering what the time period would be, like if you all know already what the time period would be between the community notification and then the actual hearing, because I guess from what I saw last time is that there's outreach that has to happen from the school to folks and giving them information on how to plug in and how to submit any type of public comment. And I want to make sure that there's enough time for that process.
The letter, the process officially starts in November. But schools who've gone through this process before will have a strong sense of kind of where they are, just based on the preliminary report. So schools get a preliminary report in October. And so that'll have all of the ratings. It won't have the recommendation yet that gets officially announced in November. They'll have a good sense of what the recommendation is just based on those ratings. So can begin to sort of be planned. And there's meetings we do with schools to sort of prepare for that process. And the work session It happens in the month of December, so it's usually a good chunk of time in between scheduling. Close to a month.
Between, so in January.
Between the official announcement and when that work session. Oh, so close. Might not be exactly, but pretty close.
Thank you.
Sally did.
Just looking at your matrices. As I look at them, I'm looking at, especially in the climate area, when I look at that, I'm looking at a fix on December 3rd. Why would that be? And that's the first question. The second question is because I'm going, as I look at the matrix for the financial management, and you have 33 all the way across the board, 33.3. Isn't strategic more of a maybe a judgment and subjective judgment? Those are my two questions in your matrix as I look at it.
Yeah, I'll start, and I don't know if Chief Jones wants to jump in. But for the survey, some of that is historical in terms of how we look at that. There are kind of 3 survey components, so you kind of have to think about, and they're now divided into 2 sections once we move to the 5 essentials because of the predictive nature of 5 essentials around academics. We consider that in the academic section. And so that survey is a survey of teachers and students, so you think about them as pieces coming together. That's how stakeholder feedback. It's not the only stakeholder feedback, so I guess that's the other thing I want to emphasize within the school effectiveness review, which is also worth a considerable amount of weight, the most weight in the climate section, are focus groups. So focus groups for parents and students and staff are an essential component of that school effectiveness review. So just looking at that survey, which is, it's taken one time by families, not everybody participates in it. So it's a piece, it's an important piece, but you got to take the pieces as a whole. So there's that, there's the school effectiveness review, there's the 5 essentials, and those are the weights that kind of roll up to give us kind of that stakeholder feedback that feed into the process that leads to our recommendation. You as a board will hear and get letters from families that you consider the formulation of what you decide to do. That's also another kind of component.
I don't really have a lot more to add to that, other than the fact that when you take a look across all of the quantitative and qualitative inputs, we have been thoughtful about making sure that stakeholder voice is represented. And as Angela described, right now we have essentially 3 different respondent groups. So with the teachers or the instructional staff and students being represented within the 5 essential survey, because we don't do a family version of that survey, we've continued to use the district's family survey as the source of information that gets included in this process. And as a part of the school effectiveness reviews, because of the focus groups and these other aspects, it still allows those voices to come through in a way that helps balance that alongside the other measures that we're considering.
Thank you.
Oh, no, there are 2 questions. Sorry, there was 2 questions. The other question was about strategic leadership, and if that's a judgment that comes out of the school effectiveness review, which actually is kind of a complex, and Chief Jones was actually kind of talking.
So the other thing is within the school effectiveness review, just as a reminder, it's built on a framework. And as a part of that framework, there are key domains that are represented when we take a look at what strategic leadership and how it's determined. So it is those, again, multiple sources of inputs. Classroom observations clearly don't play a role there, but when we take a look at the focus groups, the site visit, in terms of the documentation review, those things help us understand what's happening from that leadership perspective. And then that is one of the key reasons that we factored it into this particular domain, because that seems to be where it best fits relative to the other domains that are captured within the school effectiveness review.
The other thing I'll add is that review is conducted by SchoolWorks, who's sort of a leader in these reviews. So it's based in research. It is qualitative, but there's rubric and research that sort of undergirds looking at multiple sources of evidence to arrive at that rating. Schools also have the ability to appeal if they feel like their rating is not valid and provide additional evidence that gets considered. So we have a lot of faith in those ratings because it's a pretty vigorous process. It's not sort of like a one-off thing. Has a strong basis behind it. And our leadership frameworks and how we look at and evaluate like school leadership are very much aligned to that process.
Thank you to the team. Thank you very much for the presentation. I know that the board is looking at the calendar for next year already, and we're in the process of also composing our annual meeting agenda. And so we may be reaching out to you all to kind of support us with that, as this is a lot of information and several schools are on this slate this coming year. So I think it will be advantageous for us to spend a little bit more time with processing. And certainly, commissioners, if you have specific questions, please reach out to the team so that they can answer those questions, because this is an important process and part of our work. So thank you all very much. Teaching and Learning Committee will meet on Tuesday, May 7th at 3:30 p.m. We'll meet in executive session on Wednesday, May 15th. At 3:30 p.m. The public board meeting, our next one will be on that same day at 5:30. Our Safety and Wholeness Committee will meet on Thursday, May 16th at 4:00 p.m. These are virtual meetings. The Operations Committee will meet on Tuesday, May 21st at 10:30 a.m. And the Policy Committee will meet on Tuesday, May 21st, that same day at 4:00 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move, Robert.
Thank you, Vice Chair Roberts. Is there a second?
Second, Kenyatta Bay.
Thank you, Commissioner Kenyatta Bay. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all in favor of adjourning, please answer by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 8:54. Have a great evening. Thank you again to the REACH team. Thank you for hosting us. Thank you to our IT team. Thank you to everyone who's made this possible. Thank you very much, folks. Be safe. Have a great evening, and we'll see you at the next meeting.